Welcome everyone to Comics from the Multiverse episode 341. I am Peter and joining me as always is Matt.
Alakazam Shazam.
This is a DC Comics podcast. We get together, we talk about DC books we read this week, and coming up on this show we have Batman One Bad Day, Catwoman issue 1, Detective Comics 1068, Action Comics 1051, Lazarus Planet We Were Gods issue 1, Justice Society of America issue 2, Blue Beetle Graduation Day issue 3, and The Human Target issue 11. That is what's coming up on this week's show. So settle in for that. We do have a little bit of news as well, actually. And of course, there's what's there always time for, Matt?
Vanilla. Isn't that one of your sign-offs?
I end the TV reviews with "Have you got any vanilla?" I don't.
Ah, there we go.
Time doesn't really factor into it.
You know, there's always room for pudding, right? That's what the great Dr. Peter Venkman taught me.
No, there's always time for a ComiXology top 10, everyone.
Ay, Dios mío.
So we're gonna get straight into that.
Yeah.
So as always, looking at Tuesdays first and then Wednesday releases because they split them up into two separate charts. So what do you think the number one book was from DC on Tuesday, Matt?
I'm gonna take a gamble and say it's Action Comics 1051.
You're right. It is Action Comics.
Oh, dang! Look at that.
1051. Number 2 is Justice Society of America.
Hey.
So doing well. Number 3 is Lazarus Planet We Were Gods, which is, I mean, I guess it's technically an event. So I think last week's one shot also did relatively well.
Pretty okay.
Yeah. Number 4 is Batman One Bad Day. So there's that. Number 5 is The Human Target. So doing well. Number 6 is Detective Comics. So that's maybe a little bit lower than.
A little bit lower
expect.
for Ram V doing some great work. I'm a little bit sad on that.
Yeah, I wonder if it's just not appealing to as much of a mass audience, perhaps, as most Batman stories do, and it's dripped off a little bit. Number 7 is Tim Drake Robin, issue 5. Number 8 is Blue Beetle Graduation Day. Number 9 is Sergeant Rock versus the Army of the Dead. And number 10 is Catwoman 51, which has not been doing that well, which I guess just tells me that the floor for the top 10 this week's a little bit lower than perhaps it usually is. So not bad. So what about Wednesday, Matt? What do you think?
Well, I feel like you want me to take the bait that it's a Marvel book, but I'm gonna guess that it's Saga at number 1.
That is incorrect.
Oh my goodness.
I'm afraid number 1 is Sins of Sinister issue 1, which is a Marvel book.
What the hell is this?
I thought it's Kieran Gillen, so Connor's probably foaming at the mouth wanting to read it.
Yeah. And I'm just great. I love the concept of Mr. Sinister, but there's been so much up and down with him that it's... Oh, man.
Yeah, some sort of sinister event of some kind. I don't know.
Yeah, so...
Not up to date at my Marvel.
The Universe Melting X event begins here in a horror timeline that makes Age of Apocalypse look like the X-Men swimsuit special. Join Kieran Gillen as he kicks off the X-Men crossover Sinisters and findings since the beginning. Well, it's David Lopez and Travel Foreman on art, so I think there's a couple artists actually. Yeah, man, I wish I could get into X-Men, but it's too insular now. Like, so many moving parts and different things.
I'll probably try when there's another jumping on point, but I think the current swath of it is a bit too
dense.
Number 2 is Saga, though, so you weren't too far off with that. Saga issue 61. And then number 3 is Amazing Spider-Man, so not surprised there.
That would have been my other guess if I didn't go Saga. Would have been Spider-Man 18, but yeah.
Number 4 is Exterminators issue 5 of 5. So wrapping up that miniseries.
Who is that? Is that Percy?
That's actually Leah Williams, who is in one of the DC books this week, funnily enough.
All right.
And then we got Sabretooth and the Exiles at number 5. So that's the thing.
Well, that's a cool looking cover. It's all the very Steranko-esque.
Okay. Number 6 is not a Marvel book. We have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin
That's finally out.
Yeah. So Turtles book, issue 1 of a 5-issue series. So that's cool.
That's that's basically the end of TMNT. It's like the last story.
So it's like the Dark Knight Returns style. Okay. Then number 7 is Thor issue 30.
Okay.
Number 8 is Magic Order Magic Order 4 issue 1, which is a Mark Millar book. So
okay.
But hey, no non-Marvel. That's 3 non-Marvel books so far in the top 10. Number 9 is Star Wars: The High Republic, The Blade, which is Marvel, obviously. Although it feels like a weird one to count because it's Star Wars, but they own it. So
yeah.
And then number 10 is Dragon Age: The Missing issue 1. So that's 4 non-Marvel books on the Wednesday top 10. I've got a feeling here, looking at the rest though, that Marvel just didn't release as many books this week. So that's fair enough. But
let's look. I'll select. I'm gonna see how many Marvel books come up.
Mm-hmm.
Nope, that's not what I wanted. That's what I wanted. So this is great. All right, the Comic Geeks is being difficult right now. So
I don't know what Connor did, but he's got a Dragon Age book. He's got Kieran Gillen books coming out. There's a lot of Connor-centric material out this week.
Yeah, so it looks like there's only 12 Marvel books out this week, and 3 of which were Star Wars. Looks like 4 of which were X books, and then Thor and Amazing Spider-Man and a Doctor Strange book. So,
that was riveting, Matt. I'm so glad you looked that up.
We did. Just letting people know.
Yeah. I mean, I think some of it just looks a bit like they're not all kind of mainstream stuff though. Like you've got like Midnight Suns, which I think is a tie-in, or at least tangentially related to the video game that came out, which is a very good video game, but you know, it means the comics not as important in terms of comic books. And then you've got like All Out Avengers, which looks like a sort of, you know, just a gimmicky miniseries. Like, you know, it feels like there's a lot of non-mainline books, I suppose, from Marvel this week. So that is the ComiXology top 10. We will move on to good news, exciting news. We got an announcement of a new DC book this week for May. We have Titans issue 1 by Tom Taylor and Nicola Scott. And this is Titans officially replacing the Justice League, at least for a few months. More than that in a minute in a second news story. But obviously, the creative team's a lot to be happy about. The cover they put out is very nice. And, you know, we've always championed Dick and the Titans taking over for the Justice League. And, you know, and this is the classic New Teen Titans lineup. The only difference is being that Wally's in a Flash outfit instead of a Kid Flash outfit. So.
Yep, and Beast Boy has an eye patch now. I don't know if he did in that. I don't know if he did in that cover. But yeah, you're telling me that the Titans are getting Nicola Scott treatment, and I am there every time. And then you're gonna say, and it's written by Tom Taylor. That's a double yes for me.
Of course, yeah. There's no doubt that we were going to be into this. So no, I mean it's just nothing but good news, really. It's set up in issue 100 of Nightwing, so it feels like a natural sort of offshoot of that book, which is cool. I couldn't be more excited. So
for sure. And this must have been the thing that Redondo and Taylor were kind of teasing on the more to come with the Titans. So
yeah. Although it seems Redondo will be sticking with Nightwing. We were speculating that Redondo might jump and someone else will take over Nightwing art wise, but no, clearly not the case.
I'd be like, oh, it's not Redondo. Oh, but it's Nicola Scott. Okay.
Is it possible that Taylor's starting to get into that sort of Tom King level where he only gets good artists now?
I think him and Nicola Scott were trying to work together for the longest time because I think they did some of the New 52 Earth 2 book together, and I just think they had kept missing each other because they're fairly friendly with each other online.
Yeah, Matt, you've completely frozen still there. I don't know if you've noticed that.
No, let me see.
Maybe turn the camera off and on again. Maybe is the.
I don't know if I can. I don't. There we go. Am I moving? No.
No.
All right. Give me a second.
Well, while Matt's trying to fix that, the other bit of news here is that DC put out a slightly updated version of the timeline of Dawn of DC for the year, and it kind of reveals a couple things. Basically, this was already speculated, but there's going to be some sort of book, probably an event called Night Terrors, and that's Night with a K. So that's happening, and then it looks like towards the end of the year, some kind of Justice League book. So it seems like we've already got a confirmation of when the Justice League are coming back. So Titans, I mean, maybe the books will be set at different times, so Titans will actually be in charge for longer than however many months it is. But in terms of being alone on the comic book shelves, Titans will only have the reign for about maybe 5 or 6 months. So that's a bit annoying. Like, why not let it last a bit longer? But I mean, maybe the plans for whatever the Justice League is going to be at the end of the year will be good. But you can just sort of I mean, people have like risen the brightness and stuff to see it properly, but even on the regular version of this timeline where you can only just see start of the J, you can kind of make out the L, you can sort of see it's a Justice League logo. But I mean, who knows, maybe it'll be some sort of alternative Justice League that doesn't take place on Earth or something. Matt, any thoughts on the Justice League or Night Terrors teases?
No, because I have not seen these. I've had a very busy week.
Oh, there's nothing to see. It's just a logo that implies there's a Justice League book coming towards the end of the year.
No, nothing.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, it's very rare that there's not a Justice League book out there, right?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't last that long. So
yeah, I think what's interesting, just looking at the graphic, is that now May has like 5 things, like 5 logos listed in it, because Titans has been added to it, the Green Lantern book's coming, the Shazam's book coming, and so on. There's like 5 there now. It does make me wonder that in June there's the Wonder Woman logo. It's almost implies to me that there's going to be another 3 or 4 added to that as well for June that we'll maybe find out about in the next month or so. It's just, I mean, they may not all match, but it just seems like it's possible given just the amount of space that's there for it. So, that's all I've got. That's all I've got to say on the matter.
Gotcha.
So there you go. So, I mean, that's basically that was the news. I was surprised we even got that, because usually the week after Solicits is a wasteland as far as news goes. So it was surprising to even get a big announcement.
Especially from Taylor himself, right? Because usually that would have been like a release of some kind, you know.
Well, usually they'll leave it for like a week before the Solicits. They'll sort of like do the big announcements kind of thing. I wonder if I'm trying to wonder why they timed it this way, because it's not like they're dealing with final cutoff orders or anything yet, because that's still way, after Solicits.
Way.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they were waiting until after Nightwing 100 came out, which makes sense, but they could have still... Maybe they just didn't want to overshadow the Solicits that just came out, so they waited till after them. Because obviously this was for May, and we just got the April Solicits, so maybe they thought, oh no, if we put that out first, that's a bigger news story than anything that's in the Solicits for April. Maybe that was the thinking behind it. But then still, why not just wait another few weeks? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the stuff now, at the article. So looks like there's going to be quite a few, because you would assume that each of those, like the spaces, right? So like the one under Wonder Woman and then the other one, you'd assume there's going to be quite a few underneath there.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, that said, there's nothing under the Green Arrow one, which has a bit of space underneath it, but just
that's true too.
The way it's filled in under that Batman one in May makes me think, the June Wonder Woman one will also have like 3 or 4 underneath it as well. Yeah,
for sure. So, just taking a look. But yeah, I'm not surprised about the whole Justice thing, because it's even when like it was Cry for Justice, that was still branded as a Justice League book, even though that was more of a mini series and kind of set away from its own things. We still had technically a Justice League, although I don't know if there was a Justice League book ongoing at the time. I feel like there was, but everything past 5 years ago is kind of hazy.
This show's been more than 5 years old now, Matt. So that means there's stuff from the start of this show that you're saying is hazy.
100%. Reading through Superman, through Action Comics this week, and thinking back to that Jurgen story. And then it got me thinking about his time writing Rebirth. And was his Superman stuff on Action? Was that pre or post? And I could not remember. And I'm like, it had to have been at the start of Rebirth, right?
It was. His Action Comics was... He wrote Lois and Clark miniseries before Rebirth, and then his Action Comics run was obviously in Rebirth, so yes.
But then I couldn't remember anything that specifically came from it. I just remember liking parts of it. But the actual stories of itself, I could not remember. So
the fake Clark that turned out to be Mixie.
Mm-hmm.
Oh? Not ringing a bell?
Sure. I just remember getting to an issue that...
Mr. Oz?
Yes. I remember the Mr. Oz stuff. I remember getting to the issue and them writing out Connor Kent. And that's where the Connor Kent exists thing came from.
Huh?
Yeah, don't do that to me. He exists now. Who knows for how much longer? But hey,
no, we got all these new super characters. We don't need Connor Kent anymore. He's just dead weight.
I know. He's the redundancy. That should be his nickname now.
He is redundant. All right, let's get into the books, shall we, for the week. So we'll kick off with Batman: One Bad Day, Catwoman issue 1. WIllow Wilson writing with Jamie McKelvie on the art. So, yeah, this is the story of Catwoman stealing something, which is not surprising. That often tends to be what she's doing.
That's her bag.
But this is a personal item, which is something that we learned through flashbacks. Her mother pawned when she was a child because she was trying to, she was struggling to pay rent, struggling to pay for her kids to eat, stuff like that. And the pawn shop guy only gave her a couple $100, saying it was a fake, and the raw stones in it are worth a little bit, but it's nothing super valuable.
And then now she found out that it's for sale on this mega auction.
Yeah, big museum in Gotham's auctioning it off, and she's like, that prick took advantage of my mother. But there's some twists and turns, and
although I do like how she does the whole OJ defense of, I'm just stealing my stuff back, so I did like that little tag.
Well, that's kind of her logic, yeah. She's the first half of the issue, because it's a 70-page issue, the first half of it is like the heist itself, her sneaking in, getting some of the backstory with the flashbacks, her making some costume changes, pretending to be a waiter and the catering staff, stuff like that, and a very obviously important conversation with an old woman about the brooch that she's stealing. But the big twists and turns from the issue is that it turns out that it is still a fake, and that this woman is actually like this con artist who sells fake things to museums and auction houses.
And she got Selena. So Selena goes in thinking that it's a fake, or thinking that it's real, but being told that it was a fake by this pawn shop guy, to talking to this lady, and then Selena's eyes light up going like, oh my God, we can finally benefit from this thing, to then finding out that it's fake and that she's been conned. And what I love about Selena in this issue is the fact that this lady conned her now becomes an obsession for her. Because no one conned Selena Kyle.
Yeah, it becomes about hunting her down and dealing with it, which has its own twists and turns, because when she finally confronts her and fights her, and turns out this old woman's actually quite strong, she basically challenges what Selena's even mad about and what she's fighting for. Does the value of this item go down because you thought it was worth something and now it isn't, even though before for a long time you thought it was worthless anyway? What are you actually mad about here? And what the story is really about is Selena trying to connect with her sister. Because when she first steals it and she phones her sister and says, "Hey, I found this brooch, I got it back," her sister's like, "But why? Who cares? It was worthless. Right? Mom's dead. She's not going to care about it now." She doesn't quite understand. And the story ends with her, calling her sister. And it's about that. That's what it's really about. It's like what's really eating at Selena. It's not the brooch itself. It's the fact that she wants to bond with her sister. Batman's inclusion in this is pretty small. Obviously he shows up to offer some exposition. He fills us in what this woman's been up to. Has a bit of a kissy moment with Selena, and I thought the conversations between them were well handled. It felt very classic Catwoman and Batman. But this is a Selena story in the same way that the Penguin story was a Penguin story. Because I feel like a lot of them have still been Batman stories where the villain's the villain. This, like the Penguin story, was more, no, this was just Selena's issue, and it was her story, which is fine, but
I wish, in like to do a Catwoman movie that, wouldn't involve too much Batman. I feel like a heist movie in this vein, where we're following her trying to recover something that she's already familiar with. I like that story a lot. Like, it's really, plus I'm just a sucker for heist
I've
stuff,
not seen it, Matt, but I'm pretty sure the Halle Berry Catwoman movie does not have any Batman in it. So that you must love that.
I've never seen it.
But you should watch it, because it's a Catwoman movie with no Batman, which is your criteria for a good Catwoman movie. So,
well, no. Just what I mean is like, what I mean is, I don't need it dependent on Batman being in there. I feel like Catwoman's one of the few Batman rogues characters that could carry. Like, we got a Joker movie with no Batman, right? To tell me that you can't do, a Selena Kyle movie where she's doing a heist and Batman shows up, trying to be like, kind of like he does here.
Yeah, to be fair though, some of us would argue that that Joker movie without a Batman did not work and should not have been made the way it was. But
I'm just saying, like, I feel like she's one of the characters that could carry it, and I feel like if you do this version of her, the Cat Thief version of her, do it Ocean's 11 kind of style, follow her planning. Like, here, I feel like WIllow Wilson has the blueprint, because I thoroughly enjoyed this. Like, this is the most I've enjoyed Catwoman in, ever since Ram V has started, because his was real strong. But I think her voice for Selena was super strong. McKelvie's art is top notch. Like, I'm okay with it taking like an extra couple weeks to come out, because
the art is very good. Although I will argue, I will have one negative point here. I don't think he's suited for Batman. I think he's too clean for Batman.
Yes, the Batman was way too clean. It felt like I don't want to say fan art, but like when someone does like a super sleek version of Batman and like, oh yeah, this would be cool. It did not work.
Yeah, too clean, too smooth. It was fine for Catwoman when it was just Catwoman doing her heist stuff. But when Batman showed up and went, oh, this doesn't feel right. He looks too, I don't know, pristine. It feels off.
The suit feels brand new from the cleaners.
Yeah, it needs to be a bit grittier for Batman. Which, that's fine. And it's not a big deal in this issue because he's a small part of it. But
no, but the art too, with the breakdowns and the way the action's done, like the scene on the rooftop that starts with the two guards and they're talking about all the stuff that's going on, and they're like, oh, what's that? And then you turn the page and we get one of those, usually you see it in Flash to just show how fast he's moving, but it's like a double page spread.
I feel like we've been getting a lot of Nightwing recently. Is this
and Nightwing as well? Yeah, right. Multiple Selenas, and you can track her on the one page, make her way across. And I just think the action flows really well. And all throughout, even the fight scenes against the which we never got a name for the curator woman, right? The fight scene with her too was pretty good.
We hear like one or two of her aliases, but we never get like a...
Yeah.
Like, I think she said she can call me the Forger, I think, by the end.
Forger, okay.
Yeah, so I don't know if maybe that will stick, maybe it won't if she ever comes back again.
Yeah. But like the Forger lady, I think that fight scene was really good too, because it shows that Selena's kind of out of her depth. And she's also emotionally vulnerable now because, she's felt, she was taken advantage of.
I think what I like the most about this is that it kind of kept this sense of like cheeky fun of like Selena's personality. So the first half of it actually felt mostly quite, quite just like her breaking in, changing costumes, but sort of tricking the various people along the way to get into the brooch and getting out. All those bits felt quite fun and quite bubbly, and I think that actually lent itself quite a bit to giving it a different tone to what I like to say about the Ram V stuff, which was more of a gritty crime thing.
Right.
It's funny, you say this is the most you've enjoyed Catwoman since Ram V, but I'm like, we're still on that run that replaced Ram V, so I wouldn't say it's been that long. I don't think we've been devoid of good Catwoman for that long. It's just that we don't like the current run.
No, I'm just saying, like, because Catwoman's not a character that I tend to go towards, right? The reason I got caught back up is because you and Connor were both talking about how good the Ram V one was. But up till then, I really can't tell you, like, a Catwoman story that sticks out in my brain that I've read. Like, granted, I still haven't really read the Brubaker run with Black Mask and all that. So, but when she has showed up, in Batman or in other stuff, but I like Wilson's characterization of Selena here. Like you're saying, the bubbliness, it really comes through. And it is so much different than Ram V's. Like you're saying that was a gritty crime thing. So that characterization fit that where she's trying to do the mob, not quite a mob boss, but she's trying to get control of that part of town. And in here, she's just doing a heist. And like the scene with her going in and getting the costume on, the waiters, where the guy chases her and she ducks into the thing and then pops back out. Just like, to me, it was the right amount of light, like comedic touch for a story like this.
Yeah, there's definitely a comedic hand, sort of like overall of it. Even when, and it's not to say it doesn't have some dramatic weight, because by the end, when you realize it's just about her and her sister, and that's why she was trying to steal it in the first place, that's got some weight to it. And it does kind of, you get a good character arc out of it, but it never. It always has this sort of lighter touch to it. I think Wilson is a really good writer and had a really good strong handle on this. Like I definitely felt a little bit of that fun Miss Marvel coming out of her in this this issue. Okay. You know, just
I'll have to believe because I still haven't read a lot of Wilson's Marvel work. So.
Well, and Miss Marvel, it was often she's a teenager, she's going to sneak out of the house to go do some superhero stuff that she's not really meant to be doing because she's a teenager, but whereas here it's like, you know, Selena's going off to do a heist. She's going to go steal something.
Well, I feel like we always say this when it comes to Wilson is like the Wonder Woman stuff is, you know, we went in with an open mind and we thought it was really good. And I'm trying to think of some of the other books recently Wilson's popped up on, and we always seem to enjoy it for the most part. So
she's very good.
Just wonder why she's not doing an ongoing more at DC. Like what else is going on?
I don't know what else she's read. I mean, she might be working on some non-comic book stuff. I don't know.
Right. So, but yeah, no, I really enjoyed this, and especially coming off of the Bane one, which I felt like, while good, I felt the length of that. This I read through fairly quickly. Like it was like even it's an 80-page book, it kind of like a light, airy read, which is weird. But, you know, I didn't have to break it up in installments like I have in some of these other One Bad Days.
Yeah. No, I thought it was quite a pleasant, quick read as well for the page size. Anyway.
I remember getting about halfway through and I had to put it down to do something, and I look, I'm like, oh, I still have half of this back, and it wasn't like, oh, I still have half of this. I was like, oh, you get to return to this, so which is always a good sign when you're reading a comic.
Yeah. So no, it's good stuff. What are you giving One Bad Day Catwoman?
I'm giving this an 8.5.
I'll just go straight 8, I think, for me. But it was a really good time. And you know, any more Wilson on DC I can get, I'll take happily. So, Detective Comics 1068, Ram V writing with Ivan Reis on the art, and this is a story told from Two-Face's perspective. Well, I should be more specific because it's both Harvey and Two-Face as separate entities, sort of with the dual narration happening where there's like Two-Face is saying, "Let me take over," because this thing, this demon that they have tied to you, it's only tied to Harvey Dent. It's not tied to Two-Face. So if you want, I can help Batman because Batman's getting his ass kicked.
But you got to tell me who Batman is.
Yes.
And that's where the crux of it comes from. Which this is a continuation from that backup with Harvey and Two-Face, and how Two-Face was trying to remind him, like, I'm the one that's always been there for you. That when time gets tough, I'm the part that you tap into. So I do like how this complemented that story really well. Here. So also, didn't Albuquerque do some of the art in this too? I thought I saw his name in the credits.
Let me go back. No, you were right. Yeah, it wasn't listed on League of Comic Geeks. Yeah, fair enough.
Gotcha. But yeah, I just remember seeing the name because there are parts of the art in here that feel a lot more Albuquerque versus the clean Ivan Reis. Like I'm looking at the page where he's flipping the coin, and I'm like, oh, that's Albuquerque to a T. Yeah. But I feel like the art's balanced pretty well. Like, I'm sure there was some fill-in stuff going on maybe for timing, but I never feel like the art change gets in the way here.
So what some of the things that are going on here is that the family the Arson family is they're like taking in like homeless people and poor people and turning them into soldiers. And noticeably, they're not like giving them a choice here. Like some of them are crying, they've been held at gunpoint. Yep. Harvey's watching this, so they're really starting to like be malicious in how they're going to take over the city. And of course, Batman comes in and ends up fighting the werewolf, and then also whatever the one's called. I'm forgetting all the names again.
I forget the names too, but he has the multiple arms.
Yeah, and then eventually the one that's got a sort of wolf or horse mask.
That's, I think, the wolf mask. I think that's him because, like, look, I understand how people could call me out on. Normally, I wouldn't like this, but as a fan of werewolf stuff, the fact that Batman knows he's coming up against a werewolf, right? Like he's already fought this dude. So what does he do? He brings in a silver line or a silver incorporated suit in order to deal with him. And so I believe, you know how they all wear those masks?
Yeah.
I believe that's his mask that he wears for the transformation.
So this is just a werewolf in his human form.
I believe it's
okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's him. So, but yeah, I thoroughly love that where Batman's just like, yeah, no, I came prepared this time.
I mean, yeah, this doesn't feel cheap at all to me because he's already fought him once. Like this is, if this was round one and he's like, oh, I've got silver in my suit in case I fight a werewolf, I'd be like, come on now. But no, he knows he's fighting a werewolf, so yeah, that's fair game.
I love it. I love that Batman understands the myths and stuff of, monster lore. Now, how do you fight the guy with 6 arms? I don't know. Like that's a whole other thing.
Get some Doc Ock style extra arms.
I mean, there's that or a chainsaw, right? We do some Ash from Evil Dead.
But they kind of win. Like they get Batman down, and they're going to tie the demon to Batman and take control of Batman as well. And this is where Harvey and Two-Face they've got the dual narration and like let us take control, let us help him, kind of thing. So so of course Two-Face comes out and first of course he tosses a coin to decide because of course it's Two-Face, and that's a great page as well. And you get all these like quick little flashback panels of like Two-Face at his worst, where he's maybe considering committing suicide. He's looking at his a photo of his wife and things like that. He's in prison. All these sort of moments from the past. And then the coin lands, and sure enough, he comes out and rescues Batman. It's funny that this is the second time in this arc that Batman's been sort of rescued when he's been left for dead. The first time by Gordon, this time by Two-Face. It's really interesting. But the city's in chaos. There's fires everywhere. They're kidnapping people to try to build an army out of them. And what's interesting is the end of this actually ties in a little bit to that miniseries that we read not too long ago, with the Ten-Eyed Man and Dr. Joy.
The Arkham one. What was that called? It was the Dan Waters book.
Yeah. I can't remember the name either, which is why
I can't remember. I just remember it was Arkham City something.
Arkham City.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I got to the Ten-Eyed Man and I was like, oh, man. This is cool.
Yeah, because Dr. Joy was the doctor in that who was helping the Ten-Eyed Man and who was kind of off a little bit by the end.
Kind of off, but you understood why, because Ten-Eyed Man said he can do all this weird stuff and then he does it and you're just like, oh, okay, well, he's not just a psychopath guy, like he knows dark magic things. So just the idea of Harvey and the Ten-Eyed Man together, I'm excited to see what Ram V does.
Yeah, it's very interesting that it's tying into that. I was not expecting that stuff to come back up in a mainline Batman book.
Yeah.
But here we are. Maybe this is why it's selling less, because it is a bit weirder. It's not appealing to everyone.
And I feel that's why I love it so much, because it's Ram V, like, and on top of it too, like when he said this is the second time that Batman's being saved by somebody, I also feel like this is Gotham, trying to protect itself from these interlopers, from the Orgums.
Yeah,
right?
Because first is Gordon, who makes a lot of sense. Well, of course he'd save Batman, but now you've got Two-Face saving Batman. It's the idea that Gotham as a whole, and it wouldn't surprise me if we get a third example where it's someone even more extreme, like, I don't know, not Joker. Joker's maybe a bit too extreme, but like, I don't know, like Croc saves Batman.
Yeah, But and then when you think too that it's Gordon, right, and it's Dent, that's the year one team, right? Like,
Like you're thinking about Halloween.
Long Halloween team. I mean, thank you. That's those guys.
Which and there is a reference to believe in Harvey Dent is uttered in this book.
So like, those were the protectors of Gotham at that time. And just so you know, so Harvey giving into Two-Face here is a full trust on that. And I also like here, props to the letterer that we've had very distinct narration bubbles or blocks from Harvey and from Two-Face. And then when we get the Two-Face in control of Harvey, it's the lettering from the Two-Face in the boxes for Harvey.
Yeah, on top of that, obviously you also have Batman narration a couple of times, and you also have narration from like the demon, that's going to bond with them. You get a little bit of that, the Barbatos, if you will. That's so you've got this idea that Harvey giving in to Two-Face, and the idea that Gotham will have to turn to all of its like weirder elements to fight off this infection that is this family that's trying to invade it, is a very interesting thematic touch, which is cool to see unfold. I mean, I is this Dr. Joy and 10-Eyed Man stuff going to work out? I don't know, but I'm definitely intrigued to see what he does with it.
Yeah. So that was Arkham City, The Order of the World.
Ah, that's what the name of it was.
And so 10-Eyed Man, so I thought that was a newer creation, but no, man. 10-Eyed Man goes all the way back to the 70s.
Well, I think we knew that. I think we checked that at the time.
I don't think I was here for that discussion because this was new to me. But his first appearance was in Batman 226. So...
I don't think we talked much about it, but I think we checked and saw that he's not a new character. That probably all the characters in it were taken from something, from before.
Yeah. But yeah, so I like what you're saying about the Gotham has to lean into its weirder elements, because remember, this is still a city where a man dresses as a bat to fight crime. They're gonna have to. But yeah, just the whole stuff with Harvey and Two-Face, and we get those split pages of him, having a discussion with himself, and then with Batman and Barbatos, and so it's playing on the same kind of themes of not giving into the darkness, or when you need to give into the darkness, right? To do what needs to be done. And again, I feel that's kind of one of the things Ram V seems to be very interested in. Because those are also some of the themes that are in Swamp Thing and Catwoman and all these other things. Like he has this style when it comes to, like not interpersonal conflict, but inner conflict, right? Trying to do the right thing because it's the right thing or because you feel like it is. And I feel like Harvey Dent's the perfect person for that. And then you add 10-Eyed Man to it. Oof, it's getting crazy. Like, yeah. That guy has like each of those personalities times 10. So
yeah, I mean, almost like did Ram V, read that other mini and say, I'm going to incorporate some of this into this, or was that always kind of like planted because like there was going to be something done with them later? It's hard to tell, to be honest.
So I wish Connor was here, which that may be the first time that was said, because he's a big Dan Waters fan. So I wonder if Dan Waters and Ram V come from the same circles. So like maybe they're buddy. And, as Waters was putting together that, he was telling Ram V about it. Ram V goes, oh, 10-Eyed Man. Oh, I could use that down the line somewhere. It was one of those types. So, no.
Yeah, and the art fits the book. It is a little bit, I don't know, it is a little bit in the messy side at times. It's quite scratchy. It's going for kind of a vibe, which I can appreciate. Yeah. But, we do have two artists, and it does kind of, get in the messier side at times. So... we given because neither of us read the backup, so
no, I tried, and then it started to get onto the Gordon stuff that I did not read with the kid, and I was half asleep on top of it, and nothing was sticking. So I was like, I'm just gonna skip this. Maybe Pete read it, but he didn't. So
I've read the backups to this in ages, so no.
No, but I thought maybe you jumped back in because you had read the Gordon stuff, right?
I did. I read the first. No, I read the first arc of that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, yeah. So
gotcha. I'm gonna give in Detective Comics an 8.
Okay. Yeah, I'll also give it an 8. Like, I really like what it's doing. But some of the art being a bit messier. Keeping it sort of at the 8 level, not going any higher. So, cool. All right, Action Comics 1051. Philip K. Johnson writing with Rafa Sandoval on the art. On the main story, anyway. There's 2 backups, but we'll get to those later. So, yeah, this is kind of the next chapter in Superman. The steels, I suppose I'll call them, the irons. Are opening a new tower that's about engineering and technology. And there's obviously sabotage from Metallo in this issue, but there's a lot of character stuff here as well. It's largely about kind of like the Clark and Lois officially saying, "Hey, we're adopting these 2 kids, these Thelosians, the super twins that they're being dubbed." So I guess we've got a handy name for them now.
I love that, just because the whole Wonder Twins type thing, right? But then you had super to it. It's just a nice callback, a little Silver Agey. So
yeah, sure. So yeah, and there's some nice atmospheric stuff at the start, talking about how the world changed, or Metropolis changed after Superman sort of first appeared, and how it feels that we're kind of on the brink of a turning point again.
Yeah, so in these couple books, there's a lot of references to Doomsday, and I wonder if that's because it was the 30th anniversary, and it was high on some of these creators' minds. I mean, with Jurgens, it's a little bit different because of, that was his event, right? But there's some stuff in the Lazarus Planet book. There's some stuff in this one with the backup that I'm just wondering. Like, I don't think it's a signifier of anything, but do you think it's just because it's the 30 years since then, and we're starting to, not celebrate that, but just pay homage to it, I guess.
I guess. I mean. I don't know. I feel like Jurgens is more tied to that era, so that's why he's using a Doomsday thing in the backup.
Right.
The stuff in the other book we'll get to, but I don't know if anything's going to come of it.
Just thought it was weird that they both came out on the same week, and I read them back to back, read those things anyways. So, but yeah, the character stuff I liked here, right, was they're all sitting around the Kent's apartment, right, and I had to be reminded that people. Now they don't remember, thanks to Lex. They don't remember that Clark is Superman. But so they're all sitting around, and Connor and Keenan are playing video games, and there's a language barrier. And it added to some real fun little moments that I enjoyed. Keenan almost acting like he doesn't know what's going on, and doing the whole bait and switch and beating Connor at the game. I thought that was a lot of fun. A lot of the interpersonal dynamics going on within the super family, where kind of, for the first time, it feels like Superman has a pretty solid supporting cast that's not, the Daily Planet. That it is the super, they actually feel like a family, which up to this point, it's been very fragmented. And I know Bendis did things with the super family, but it didn't feel this way,
Yeah, we also find out that Lois really likes Superman's Warworld outfit.
Poor John.
What's so funny is I wouldn't have even thought that was a dirty thing, except for the way that Lois reacts to him seeing it in the closet. And it's very clearly, oh no, this was kept for kinky stuff. And John's just really embarrassed. I would have just been like, well, he just still has his suit from Warworld. What's the big deal?
Like he's gonna put it in a glass case like Batman does with stuff. But yeah, no, Lois closing the door. That was great art on Sandoval there. Also, the idea that the Steelworks Tower is going to be like a foot taller than LexCorp Tower. That just cracked me up. And Lex isn't going to be able to have that, right? Like, just for that personal slight, he's going to have it blown up.
But on the art there, when Lois shuts the closet door, it's drawn like she's got a super speed. Like that I mean, obviously she doesn't really, but that's to add to the joke that she moved over so quickly to shut the door. You got all the speed lines and stuff. So that's fun stuff. So yeah, they announced that these kids are being taken in and adopted. Kara gives them their new House of L suits. John seems a little miffed, and you can kind of understand why, because in a weird way, these kids are kind of picking off where he was sort of robbed of his childhood with his parents, and then he came back later. So, yeah.
I feel Taylor's going to use that and explore that in the mini that we're getting, because, We're gonna tie up those Ultraman threads with Valzad and all that type of stuff, right? But I do like it here because he is a little bit slighted by that. He didn't get his childhood, and not that I ever feel like Lois and Clark would ever be like, oh, we get to be parents again. But you feel that there's a joy to having these kids in the house, and I almost, if John wasn't upset, it would feel weird. I feel, and just the version that we've gotten over the last year or so. He's very a cerebral character at this point, and we get, we know what his inner feelings and stuff are. So I do like that Johnson took the time and took that beat to make us think about that.
Yeah. So obviously we have Metallo sabotaging the thing, and Lex is still talking in his head, and Metallo is, there's a moment where like a kid's scared of him. The kid can tell his face is like slightly off, like there's something not quite right about him. I
love Metallo when he's talking to Lex. He goes, "The face isn't right," and for whatever reason, that sentence cracked me up. Also, the what's the word I'm looking for? How the obligation from Metallo because he wants his sister's safety. I really like that layer to him because it's not a maniacal villain thing, right? He's not just the robot with the kryptonite heart. There's a begrudgingness to him now that I feel is going to be key to the character going forward.
Yeah. I mean, this building is not lasting long, though, because when he blows it up, they all talk about how it's all going to fall down, and the supers all just... They all just have to work together to basically stop it from like crushing people and make sure no one gets hurt. But the building's already gone, and so Lex couldn't even let it get open. It's literally the opening ceremony, and the thing's coming down. So, so its reign as the tallest building in Metropolis lasted about 5 minutes.
Yep.
So, obviously there's some nice pages here of action and stuff. The big cliffhanger is that Connor was the one who sort of first saw Metallo, and the ending is Metallo with all his clothes burned off, kind of holding Connor, because Connor, of course, is a bit of a chump and couldn't handle himself against Metallo.
Hey now. Also, though, I do have a question about that with his half Kryptonian physiology, right? The kryptonite shouldn't affect him as hard, right? So you're thinking he took a beating from Metallo. So...
Yeah, because I also take that though as he's also not as invulnerable as like the others are. So I think he can be beat up by someone who's relatively strong. Was my assumption.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that like it wasn't just the kryptonite that did him in. Is that he did fight with him and they went a couple rounds. And that's what led to the explosion and whatever. That's just my headcanon.
Well, I think the explosion was going to happen either way. I think that's what he was there to do. But
yeah. Anyways, but he he took a beating. And that gave the super family enough time to react to things, and Connor played his part, right?
Yeah. So we kind of end in the midst of the action, which gives us a cliffhanger. The issue spends time building. The action at the end is fine, and it looks quite good art wise. But for me, it was the family stuff and like the setting up of the adoption, and just the idea that Kenan's hanging out with the family is kind of just a fun, different vibe to get because he's been kind of separate since his creation.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
I like that. And I like that Kara's the one that speaks Mandarin, right? Which ties into the monkey print stuff and the Devil Nazar and all of that type of thing. I do like that. It feels like there's a synergy there.
I will say, I'm not in love with Kara's new outfit. I'm like, why can't she just look like Supergirl still?
Yeah.
It's like, for some reason, like they want all the two new kids and some of the other characters to all have these sort of matching looking outfits. Yeah. Even John seems to have a new outfit that's kind of more like theirs. And I'm like, nah, just let Supergirl and John look like they did.
Like, but, even if this is just about getting Supergirl out of the skirt look, there's a way to do the jacket. You can
still have her, have the
blue,
the color scheme without. Yeah, just have her have blue pants instead of.
Right, just let her roll with the blue, kind of like Clark, right? Because to me, it's her and John are the Robin and Batgirl, and not just because of their roles there, right? But I feel like, Kara should be dressed more similar to Clark, and not in that weird jacket, which it's not bad. It's just the color scheme is.
I like her in a cape. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
I want the red cape, and the simple blue top because the new outfit's not like poorly designed. It's just a little bit busier than I would like.
Yeah. I do like that Connor has kept his leather jacket look there to distinguish him from John and that suit, right? Because they're kind of similar. So that's there. And Keenan has the zip up on his logo, still his same one, but he has that kind of cool zip up biker jacket.
Yeah. Yeah, I just like he can still have his cape. For some reason, they seem to have taken the capes off of everyone except Superman. Like Superman is the only one who's allowed to have a cape now for some reason, and I don't understand.
I don't like that. I don't like that.
Yeah, like Keenan, John, and Kara should all have their capes.
And I would argue that Steel, at least one of them, should have a cape. I don't remember because Natasha doesn't, right?
I'm not sure. I have to say, I do actually kind of like that hoodie she's wearing over her Steel suit. I don't know why, but I think that does actually give her a little bit. It breaks up just the monotony of the Steel a bit.
Yeah, but if that's the case, then John Henry should definitely have his cape.
Yeah. Right.
We should get the traditional Death of Superman looking Steel. I like that look a lot.
We don't see him suited up in this issue though, so I don't know if they're giving him a cape or not.
That said, him in the suit was giving me animated Luthor vibes. You know, and I don't know if that was on purpose, but I realized I'd never really seen John Henry Irons in a suit.
Oh yeah, you've been doing some parallels where he's kind of like he's got a bit of a Lex vibe.
Yeah, and so he's like the good version. He's the the lawful good Lex Luthor.
I mean, really, what you're saying is he was a bald guy in a suit.
Yeah, but just his whole vibe of it, his building and his presentation, and I forget that Steelworks is a company, right? Because to me, he's the scientist type. He's kind of I don't want to say Lucius, right? Because he's not an inventor that way. But he has he's mainly just scientist. And I forget that Steelworks is a business. And, so him suiting up in the, traditional business suit, I can't remember seeing in a very, if at all. So.
Well, moving out of the backup, or the first of two backups, which is the Dan Jurgens one with Lee Weeks on art. This is the young John Kent. This is the sequel to Superman and Lois. And it turns out, apparently, there was a story in that 30th anniversary special that kind of set up a couple of things, which we did not read. So
nope. And did it make me want to go back and read it? A little bit. Will I? I have no time, so no.
Yeah, so this is the family with young John flying or moving to the farmhouse in California, and there's even like a little joke here about how he's got the black suit on because Lois likes that. There's a few jokes in this book about Lois liking certain outfits on Clark. But yeah, so what we find out is that whilst this whatever was going on in the 30th anniversary special, where there was this like sort of Doomsday-esque like homage, Doombreaker, yeah. But there's like an artifact, like a bone from the original Doomsday that was sort of lost in the battle, and everyone doesn't know where it is. And the reveal in the issue is that our sly little John Kent stole it and has it in his room. So we get some of the family bonding stuff, but John flies off with this at the end of the issue. And basically it just reveals that he has it more than anything, and that this is probably going to lead to trouble. But then the cliffhanger, which is separate of this, is that someone arrives in a spaceship. Someone crashes.
Some lady,
yeah, some lady. And I presume she's speaking Kryptonian with that speech bubble, but I don't know. So I'm not sure.
Yeah. I do like the idea of John taking the bone fragment as a way to keep his dad safe, right? Like as a kid, it's his kid logic. Like, well, if I keep it here, then no one can use it against him, And so I did like that a little bit. I'm curious to see what Doombreaker is and how it's different than Doomsday. So I'll be researching that just to see. So I don't know how long this is going to last, but this was called Lois and Clark 2. So
I presume at least like 6 or 8 issues of backups. Yeah.
So definitely by the next issue, I'll get caught up on Doombreaker and see how much of a threat that it was.
Yeah. I mean, I have a small concern that this blonde woman at the end is supposed to be a retcon of how Kara arrived, which doesn't really make much sense to me, just given that that's a big change versus everything else. There is kind of a reference here, though. They're living in the regular, or like the main Earth here, because Lois says, or when John asks Clark about the black suit, he says it's time period appropriate, which suggests that this is them still having come from like an alternate Earth and being like, oh, or alternate timeline, perhaps you might say, and because the death of Superman's happened, or the Doombreaker stuff happened recently, like we like this is the correct outfit to be wearing because this is what Superman was wearing at the time.
Right.
At least that's how I read that exchange anyway. So there's that. I mean, I feel like this doesn't have too much story in it, but it does have a lot of setup, which is more than I can say for some backups, because I feel like, okay, it set up these key things. They've just moved here. It's set up that he's got this doomsday bone that's glowing. It almost looks like one of the crystals that you have for the fortress, the way it's glowing.
Well, yeah, which goes with the idea that Doomsday was a Kryptonian weapon.
Yeah.
You know? But to me, it looks like it's one of those bony protrusions that come out, and it broke off in the fight with Clark.
Yeah, it doesn't glow like that when he's attached to it, though.
No.
This is like a new thing that's glowing. And then, of course, you have the crash landing of the alien woman in the ship at the end, which, if it's Kara, it makes no sense to me. But I'm only saying that because it's a blonde woman. But, like, and not only does it make no sense in terms of, like, continuity right now, because I think the New 52 version is still technically the arrival of Kara. Just this demeanor when she gets out and says, "Take me to your king," just doesn't feel like her. So I don't think it is her, but
no.
I'm just putting forth that in case it does end up being some weird retcon, then that I'm acknowledging that it could be. So I'm not so sure, but I suspect that this Doomsday Bone is going to be like, oh, this is like a magnet for trouble that's going to like all lead to John, and he will learn some very valuable lessons about stealing, dangerous parts of Doomsday machines, basically. And then I confess that I did not read the last backup because I took one look at the first page and went, you know what? No, I'm good. I'm out.
Yeah. So this is a more of a continuation of that Power Girl and Omen story that started off in Lazarus, in the Lazarus Planet special. And,
last week, which I did not like.
No.
So which is why I did not have any interest in this.
I'm going to give Leah Williams a lot of credit here in the type of story that she's going to try to tell in this backup. And it's all about heroes navigating trauma. So the main crux of this is Omen trying to teach Power Girl, Karen, how to navigate this psionic leak and her psychic abilities. And then they're going to use them to help some of these heroes or other people deal with their trauma. So in this, the first person that
I did skim ahead. I saw Beast Boy was in the last page crying, so I'm assuming that's where that comes in.
Yeah. So which I was getting a little bit of worry out of this because the last time we dealt with heroes in trauma was Heroes in Crisis, and we don't like to talk about that. However, as good as Tom King is, I got to do some research on Leah Williams because as someone that spent time in therapy and whose sister-in-law is a therapist, there's a lot of psychology lingo and personal work type stuff in here, and I feel like in the state of the world being what it is over the last couple of years with the pandemic and the loneliness and all this other stuff, I like that there's a spot for this in superhero comic books. And so I would never have picked Power Girl to be one of the people or one of the characters for this, but partnering her with Omen and Omen saying that she, when she's not a superhero, she's a psychologist, right? So, partnering them up, I think is pretty, would have never have thought of that. So that's nice. But the whole crux of this is that ever since the end of Dark Crisis, Beast Boy joined the fight, but then became this little calf. And Nightwing brings him to Omen and Power Girl and is like, look, he won't transform back. He won't speak. He's just kind of stuck in this form. Can you help us? So in that, they have Omen take the role of the therapist and then has Power Girl because she's, I don't know if she's Kryptonian or whatever version they're going with here. But because she's a bit more sturdier, she sends her psychically into Beast Boy's psyche to do a lot of like the field work, for lack of a better term. So she gets in there and it's just a mess, and it looks like the Titan's Tower wreckage from Dark Crisis, and everything's bathed in red, and she ends up seeing like these animals kind of swarming around and acting super defensive, and Karen realizes that this is Beast Boy's trauma, and her and Omen figure out that Gar never had the time to process being shot in the face by Deathstroke, and because of that, it led him to recede into this baby cow form, and kind of just not deal. It's almost like he's disassociating. And so when she gets in there, all these animals are kind of his defense mechanism. They're pieces of the red and the morphogenic field coming to protect him because he's almost in constant fight or flight. So Karen gets in there and she's dealing with like a grizzly bear and a saber-toothed tiger and a pterodactyl, and at one point a dragon. She gets run down by a bull before she finds like Gar. I keep calling him Garth. Garth's Tempest. Gar. Yeah, it's Garfield. Finds Gar as a baby, and that's where she puts together that it's the Deathstroke stuff, because he points to this big version that's in the sky. And she comes across this tree, and this tree is just bound in ropes, and she realizes that his tie to the red is now broken because of this trauma. So Karen starts going and trying to free a lot of these branches so he can get touched back in. And she's like, yeah, it's going to take me some time. We have to really decode all of this. And as she's doing that, this big, almost looks like a kaiju, comes to the field, and it's him with the eye patch. It's Garfield. And when she looks back, the tree is all back now in full bloom, right? Which was his representation to the connection. And then Omen pulls her out, and Beast Boy is now back in his, more traditional human form. And that's where he starts crying next to Nightwing. So if you can get past the art, I feel like it's a really nice read, especially if you are interested in like that, I don't want to say therapy type thing, but like the mental awareness of or mental health type stuff. Because I do feel like it's important now that,
Yeah, for the record, actually, just because this is Leah Williams, an art by Margaret Savage, and clearly I didn't get past the art because I took one look at the page and went, nope.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. So if you can get past the art with Savage, which I tend to like Savage's art more than not, but ever since you pointed out the dead eyes, now when I get to a page that has the dead eyes, and I will say Leah Williams as a writer really has a, the voices down for, at least, I'm not that familiar with Omen, but a version of Power Girl that is kind of this, she's kind of stubborn and she's willing just to keep pushing in order to get through. There's a really funny scene between them where they're going to put their superhero costumes on, and, Power Girl's has updated hers, but she still has the big chest window. And Omen's like, you can wear any costume you want. She's like, no, I like it. And, she's like, it's like free air conditioning. You should try it sometime. She goes, no, I'm okay. And she's like, all right, well, come talk to me when you're all sweaty later. And it was a really fun, like, let's poke fun at Karen.
I will say, I appreciate that this is written by a woman, because I feel like any man writer trying to crack jokes about this would make me cringe.
Well, but it feels very, as someone that's surrounded by a lot of women, right? My wife's family is very close, and there's always times around them. It felt like a conversation between two actual women. It wasn't like, this put upon thing where they were talking about, she's like, you can cover up, you don't have to. But the fact that it's Karen choosing, she's like, no, it's kind of my look, and I'm comfortable like this. It lets you know that's the character that she is. And yeah, I
Batman has Robin to distract the enemies. Karen Starr has cleavage.
Which I will never forget. It was in Jeff Loeb. I think it was in Public Enemies, where in Batman Superman, where they need to distract Toyman the kid, what's his name? Hero? Is it Hero?
I can't remember.
And they're like, Karen, you go do it. She's like, why? And then she looks down. She's like, oh, okay. You know, so for the longest time, Power Girl's chest has been her defining feature. So if we're going to get away from that and kind of poke fun at it, I'm all here for that, because I think she's a character that no matter what they've tried to do with her, nothing has stuck. And I feel like here making her like this co-therapist to the superheroes is this person that, you know, that will keep pushing to get through.
I'm sure she's probably still from another Earth, but here's a pitch for a new version of her origin, right? I'll try this one by you.
Yeah.
So you're in the movie Twins, right? Like they're kind of like, you know, they're trying to make the perfect specimen, this perfect human, and they had all these men submit their DNA, and they had a mother, right? And the twins weren't intended, like, you know, they got Arnold, right? And this is the perfect specimen that we're trying to create. And then the leftover genetic material was DeVito, and that's kind of the joke of the movie. How about Karen Starr, Power Girl, is the perfect specimen that was trying to be created, and then Connor Kent was the leftover genetic material, right? So they're both like clones that Lex was trying to make.
That's just mean. That said, now when I read Connor Kent, I'm going to hear Danny DeVito. Which also, funnily enough, you point that out, I finally started Always Sunny this week.
There you go.
Because me and my wife needed something light that we can just put on.
I mean, he's not until season 2, but yeah.
Right, but we got through season 1 and we just started season 2. The the episode where Charlie gets hit by the van and is in the wheelchair, and Frank takes him to the strip club and he keeps one upping him. Oh my God, I have not laughed like that. Very good, very early.
Oh yeah.
I have a whole other 13 seasons to get through, so you know.
Obviously, the humor in it's often quite dark, and it'll tackle subjects that like maybe you feel like you shouldn't be laughing at. But the one that got me quite early on was the shows on the doll where you were touched, Charlie, and the creepy uncle, like getting into it a bit too much.
Yes.
That'll always stick with me. I really need to get back. I've seen like 7 seasons of It's Always Sunny, and there's like 15 of them now, so I really need to go back and.
Also, when you refer to Connor as an abortion survivor,
yeah, that's when It's Always Sunny.
and I don't think I've gotten to that episode yet. But with Charlie, I told my wife, I told Ash about that, and she goes, "What? And you guys laugh? That's kind of mean." I'm like, "That's Connor. It's fine."
See, this'll cheer you up. So Charlie and the waitress, I believe, are married in real life. So if you feel bad, then like you want to pick me up. No, it's a real sweet story in real life. Yeah. It's just in the show.
And then Mac and Dee met on the show and got married.
They did. Yes, they got kids now and everything.
Yeah, because what made me start this is I'm like, I've been putting it off. You know, you talk about it a lot, Connor and my brother. My brother's been telling me to watch it for years now. But we watched the soccer show when Mac and Ryan Reynolds bought a team in Wales, right? Wrexham. And she shows up. I did not realize they were married, right? So she shows up on an episode when they finally go. It's Ryan Reynolds and his wife, Blake Lively, and then those two. And they're in the owner's box, and they keep showing them on the TV. And that's basically the only part. I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize that they were married. And I did some research, found out that they met through the show, and here they are. So I was like, I might as well get to there. So when you brought up Danny DeVito, now I'm going to hear Connor Kent as Danny DeVito. Thanks to that little Power Girl alternate history.
No, DeVito's great on the show. You're making me want to go back and like start watching it again.
I can't wait because I keep getting the gif of the trash man. Or it's using social media a lot, just the sound. I'm trying to get to that episode so I have context for it.
There's tons of gifs that are used. Like, I like to use the anyways I started blasting when I'm talking about wrestling a lot. Is
that from the show?
Yeah, that's from It's Always Sunny. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if that was a Danny DeVito on a talk show doing a bit.
Yeah. Oh. And my other favorite Danny DeVito one is "Can I offer you an egg in this trying time?"
So, but yes. So not to distract from the Leah Williams book yet,
That's what I'm dying to.
I really feel like it. Not that I don't like saying that's important because that makes it pretentious, but I'm glad that there's a space right now in a comic book for them to explore these mental health themes, and then using these type of characters on top of it, right? And Beast Boy being their first person, after what we saw that he went through, as long as he doesn't, decide to murder a bunch of people on accident, because he can't deal with the trauma. I think we're in good hands. So I'm definitely gonna keep reading this one. This was definitely, I was like, after the Lazarus Planet thing, I was kind of like, I don't know if I want to read this. This one made me a believer. Now I want to check out some of the other Leah Williams work that's out there.
Okay. Well, all right, that's right. Action Comics 1051. And David, you are welcome for that big tangent you have to edit out. So, what are you giving it?
I'm going to give Action Comics. Did I do 0.5? And I'll just give it an 8.
Yeah, I'm also gonna go 8. It's my third 8 in a row.
Yeah.
I'm 8
well,
happy
about
this week.
7.5, but I liked it a little bit more. That last story really put it up over. So
no, I mean, I liked the main story. I liked all the world building it was doing, the family stuff, and I enjoyed the Dragons backup fairly well. And they both have good art. I think Sandoval's art was really strong throughout. I would say I liked it more than the art in Detective, certainly. So, yeah, no, it was very good. The action's in good hands right now. I don't know if I'm going to always be into the backups, but certainly I like the Dragons one this week. So, yeah. All right, Lazarus Planet, We Were Once Gods, issue 1. Obviously, there's a bunch of different creators because it's 4 short stories in this book. And obviously, last week, none of us were really that enthused about the Lazarus Planet special, and I said pretty much that I don't think I want to read any more of these. I'm only going to check out this next one because it's got creators on it, and it's also following up the Shazam story. And it is Josie Campbell who writes that story, so I was curious. So, well, I do think this one's better than the one we got last week. I am definitely not reading any more of these.
So I read the first 2 stories, ran out of time, so I can talk about those 2.
Sure.
But I will say, instantly liked those first 2 stories. I thought they were more interesting than anything in the last one.
I mean, the first one, is interesting from a little bit of world building and just the reveal, because the first story is basically the reveal that the Trench have been turned into humans, or Atlanteans, maybe. They've been turned into humanoid-looking people.
So, and I didn't know this, and I thought I knew a lot about that side of the Aquaman universe, that they're part of the ancestral tree of the Atlanteans. So, somewhere, so they're not a separate species, right?
Yeah, what that means is that somewhere in the past, an Atlantean, balked a fish.
Yeah. Oh, God. But I wasn't going to take it that way. I was going to take it as they went off into the trench.
The Shape of Water is a true story in the DC universe.
I got to go back and rewatch Creature from the Black Lagoon because I didn't believe the love story was that strong. I've been told I am wrong, and that's where Guillermo got inspiration from. So, and now you're dropping the Trench stuff on me. So now the Shape of Aquaman, or the Shape of Aqua, whatever we're gonna call it.
Is that an extra fin, or are you just happy to see me?
Yeah. But yeah, so I'd always thought the Trench are just a separate species of underwater people, right? Not that they were along the, in the, I don't say evolution, but in the line of the Atlanteans, like Arthur. And maybe Arthur's just using that as a metaphor when he says, I see them for what they are, our ancestors. But yeah, I did like the pacing of that story. Manipul, right? So
it's Francis Manipul who's both writing and art. And I think, just to set up what this story actually is, it's kind of this family who lives by the beach who are attacked by what seems to be a human of some kind, but then, a human washes up on shore. They bring him in, but then he starts acting out and attacking them. Yep. And the main crux of it is that the father of this family is very xenophobic or What show? What? I mean, I guess he is, but that's not the point. That's not the important part.
No, but he's got like this toxic, like, this is my house, and this is.
Yeah, but the important part is that he's like effectively racist against superheroes and people with powers, and he's like, oh, this guy could be a dangerous, like he could have superpowers. I should have just killed him on the beach when we had the chance, kind of thing.
Or he's someone that needs help from a shipwreck, Dad. Like, you know.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. But I think the reason for this setting up with this lens of this character being this sort of prejudiced, individual is that the idea that Aquaman himself is going to have to try and accept that the trench might actually be, capable of being learning human, or not humans, it's in humans because it's just the word that I go to, but, humanoid or Atlantean characters. Like the idea that they now have to be treated and sort of like taken care of and helped to evolve into a more intelligent, because this is the thing. Like we see this trench that's turned into a humanoid figure. He's attacking the family kind of and the dad, but there's several moments where he kind of sees his reflection and kind of like pauses and reconsiders what he's doing. He's kind of confused. So it's this idea that this new evolution that's happened to them, they have to be nursed into their next stage, and that's something that Aquaman's going to have to deal with. Yeah, it's quite interesting. It's an interesting kind of like reveality drop in this weird like short story in this special, because I feel like whatever this is going to continue on to next is like, oh, this is going to be a big deal, hopefully. I will say this though, Aquaman, where's the beard? I don't approve of this freshly shaved Aquaman anymore.
No, I thought we all agreed that the hybrid Peter David, Captain Aquaman look. Well,
they've kept the long hair though, so it's especially weird. If you're going to go no beard and have the short hair, but if you're going to have the long hair, he needs to have the beard.
He needs the pirate look.
He looks like, remember that time when Triple H like had the long hair but was shaving his face? It just looked weird.
Yeah.
No.
Or he's Jericho-esque, like the Lionheart version of Jericho.
It just, I don't know,
wavy blonde hair. It doesn't match. No.
It looks baby-faced. I like it.
100%. But also what I liked too in the art was that anytime the trench guy got into more of the primordial behavior, his face changed a little bit, right, in the art to show he's a little bit monstrous still. And I got a little bit worried when he took the dog. I'm glad the dog's okay, But yeah, no, I like the story, and I wonder what's going on with Aquaman, because like we don't have an ongoing Aquaman book right now, so wonder if this is where those are going to pick off, or if there's going to be more Lazarus Planet things, because it's also tied that somehow the volcano affected the trench they were living in.
Yeah. Well, that's what reveals it, because Aquaman references the trench, and you realize, oh, that's what these, because he's got like more of them behind him, and you're like, oh, that's what these are. This is the trench. They've transformed because of the Lazarus rain. It just says at the end, to be continued in Dawn of DC, which could mean anywhere, basically, coming up. Right. So we know it's going to come back up at some point, but nothing specific. Whereas some of them have specific, it's that mini-series that's coming after these 2 months or whatever. This is more broad, so we'll see where it pops up. But maybe this confirms there'll be more Aqua-related stuff to come. But the second story, which is a Martian Manhunter story called Songs of Pain by Dan Waters with art by Max Dunbar. It has some stuff at the start and the end where he talks about how he looks at the planet, and he's almost much like the ocean with the waves. He can see waves of like emotion. He can see like there's like a sort of like spread of happiness here, a spread of fear there, things like that, and it's kind of beautiful to him, right? Which is kind of an interesting visual. It's an interesting idea to concoct.
And I like that that's how he sees the world different than someone like Superman, because they compare that at the end, right? Where when Superman looks at the world, he almost sees like the bigger picture, if you will. Whereas John can get more, focused by watching these emotional outbursts, and not outbursts, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. But the main part of the story, though, is that one of the characters who's affected by the Lazarus rains, this guy in Metropolis, who is effectively, he can take someone's like pain from them. So he's, and to be fair, like we get introduced to him where he's already doing that. He's going around the hospital and just taking pain from patients who are dying or who have bad illnesses. But it's becoming too much to handle, and Martian Manhunter comes down to try and help him. But the main conflict is that he's effectively absorbed some of the memory or the tragedy of Doomsday, and he starts to kind of like Doomsday out, and then like Jean tries to absorb it, and then he starts to sort of turn into sort of green version of Doomsday, and it's sort of try to handle this, and then the guy kind of takes it back because Jean can't deal with it, so we get this kind of big red Doomsday looking interpretation, and the guy's able to actually sort of like basically turn it into like a crystal. Like he sort of like condenses it into like a shape, and it's just this sort of crystal that's this like memory of Doomsday. And it kind of, Jean, as he's narrating throughout this story, explains that Doomsday is such a strong idea that, and the whole idea of Doomsday that he would keep repairing and rebuilding from whatever happened to him. So that even now the trauma and the memory of him could potentially become like, I both kind of like this but also kind of dislike it. In one way it feels like somehow it's another way of Doomsday come back, which I thought was a bit whatever.
Well, there's that, but it also reminded me of Morrison's Super Doom idea, right? Where it was this thing that once you at your most nihilistic and your most pure what's the word? Cynical, right? That is also a manifestation of Doomsday, right? And so so I like the idea, because once Waters started getting into like the whole, Doomsday tried to hook into the red and that field, but he couldn't gain foothold, and this, that, and the other. I was like, okay, we're not bringing back Doomsday, are we? But then just the whole idea that the memory of him in Metropolis, and he caused such a stir, and that he killed Superman. That's a big enough thing that it could, make him manifest again.
Do you know what I think it is? I think I like the concept of this. I think it just deserves to be told over a slower, more gradual build than just being condensed into like a 13-page story. I think the way it evolves to where there's already like him taking it from his head and trying to fight it in his head, that I feel like we get to that so quick that it kind of like almost makes it feel a bit too, not schlocky, but just too rushed and too much of like a thrown out idea. Whereas if you built this up over time, that the idea that the trauma of that day that sort of seeped into Metropolis can manifest in some way. If you built up to that over time, I think it could be like a great almost existential like story in Metropolis. And maybe with Jean being the main character who's investigating it because he's a telepath or whatever, or maybe someone else, but not a Superman story. So it's something that's more about another character who can sense
and
that.
Don't forget that John was killed in a way because he was under the disguise of Bloodwind, right? And he was one of the people that responded to Doomsday. So him even having that tie to that would make him a really good character.
Yeah, I think this is like a really interesting kind. Like so often I'll complain that these 13-page stories like have no story. This has too much. This is too good for a 13-page story. This needs to be like at the very least like a One Bad Day size one shot, if not like a full arc of 6 issues.
Well, and maybe we're gonna get some of that with Jean, with Dan Waters in Dawn of DC,
Yeah, maybe, but I feel like they've rushed through the reveal of this idea too quick, though. I would have loved this to be spread out and explored more.
Yeah, for sure. Because when you get to the end and he hands him because the pressure and the heat of that rage of Doomsday, when he pulls up that crystal, that's what's left of the human that had the powers of the empath.
Yeah.
Right, and just that it's such a sad turn. That this guy was trying to do good, and because he absorbed all this pain, and it crystallized,
Imagine, Matt, that if this was like a 6-issue miniseries, that we could actually speculate before we found out what actually was going on, that maybe we find out at the end of issue 2 or 3 that it was actually the manifestation of like the memory of Doomsday and the trauma of that. Like, I would love being able to theorize and talk about what's affecting the people in Metropolis and what's affecting maybe this telepath that we're following or something. Like, I feel there's so much potential with it, and I'm sad that it's just this 13-page story.
Well, and there's that too, and even the beginning when he goes and like he takes that guy's pain away, and with tears in his eyes, he's like, "No wonder you couldn't sleep," right? That is some great character building, right? Of this guy that's going around and absorbing people's pain, and it's just, and that's the Max Dunbar art at play too, because the old guy goes from having this look of pain on his face, right, to he's smiling, and our main guy, I think his name's Ars or RC, is
yeah, I wasn't sure how to pronounce it because arse, it sounds like it's the UK way of saying ass, which does not make it sound good to say.
Well, let's say RC then.
RC,
okay. Just the tear in his eye, and it tells me everything I need to know about this guy. This guy that got powers from the Lazarus rain, and instead of doing like what that one guy did in the John story last week of breaking in and stealing stuff, he goes and starts helping people through Metropolis, because that's the city of Metropolis, right? That's the city that is, that Superman city, the inspirational, he is hope and all that stuff. But yeah, this was definitely worthy of a miniseries, for sure.
Yeah. So I think it suffers from being just as short as it is, but at least it was some interesting concepts. It had that sort of that sad ending where Superman can't see the world the way that Martian Manhunter does, and he feels sad by that. I thought that was a really interesting beat to leave off on. The Wonder Woman story that comes next, by Philip Kennedy Johnson, and art by Jack Herbert, shockingly is the one that I like the least. I think I don't know. I didn't get a whole lot out of it. It was basically like armies of people that Amazons have fought in the past are coming up from the ocean because they're all like, back to life because of the Lazarus rain. And it's mostly just the fight more than anything. First of all, it's Wonder Woman and the other character she's training, and then eventually Hippolyta and Nubia shows up with the Amazons to help fight. But it's mostly fighting. It's mostly just that. Nubia explains the souls are flooding from the Well of Souls, and that's Doom's doorway is under assault. So all these like all these mystical connections to like the dead are kind of like going haywire because the Lazarus resin is bringing people back effectively. And it ends with a cliffhanger saying to be continued on Lazarus Planet: Revenge of the Gods. So that's the miniseries that's coming after the main Lazarus Planet stuff is done. So I just felt like this was mostly fighting, and it's clearly just a tease for this miniseries. Now, the miniseries itself might be quite good. I'd be curious to check out the miniseries, but I wasn't feeling this all that much, sadly. So, yeah. And then the last story, which is kind of the one that I read it for, because it was the follow-up to the Shazam stuff, and by Josie Campbell, with art by Caitlin Yarsky. And it's Mary looking for Black Adam only to find Malik instead, and saying, hey, I think you were in my dream. I thought it was Black Adam, but it was kind of a silhouette, so it may have been you. So I need your help to go and get Billy. So they go to the Rock of Eternity, although it looks very different. They think they go to the Rock of Eternity. I mean, maybe it is something different now, but we get like someone that looks like Billy, as Shazam, saying you don't belong here. And of course there's a bit of a fight that breaks out, but Billy's actually been held captive, and effectively quite quickly Malik just says, well wait, if you're connected to the Rock of Eternity, then how can it hold you? So Billy just says Shazam, and that kind of brings him back, and he goes back home with Mary, and he hugs all his family, and the big tease at the end, which also sets up Lazarus Planet: Revenge of the Gods, is that the wizard is pissed and is mad and is like, you know what, I keep entrusting my power with others. Clearly, that's they're all traitors, all of them. None of you are worthy. So it seems like Shazam's going to be coming after the Shazam family. The wizard Shazam, that is. So. Again, interesting setup for the story. I definitely didn't enjoy this anywhere near as much as the actual miniseries with Mary. Obviously, the voice is still there, and Malik's a nice enough character. I enjoyed what I read of him in the Black Adam book before I dropped it. But again, it feels like kind of a clunky setup to a story. It feels like the resolution to get Billy free was just like a quick. I don't know. It was just so quick, and it felt kind of throwaway, and it's like, oh, that's just already done, I guess. All right, that was easy enough.
And it feels to me like Mary going to save Billy is worthy of its own series, right?
Yeah.
Like that's an arc in a Shazam book.
But it's like half of this is like her meeting Malik for the first time, which is fun. I enjoyed that half of it. But all of the stuff with actually getting Billy free just felt so rushed and just so quick, and I don't blame the writer for this, because I assume this is an editorial thing of he needs to be free for the next thing. So this is how much time you've got to do it. So yeah, I was a little disappointed overall with like how this dealt with that story. It just felt really rushed to me. So, yeah, very mixed bag again. It's definitely better than last week's special, just because it has had some better ideas in it at the very least. I'm curious about this trench thing going forward. I'm curious about possibly this miniseries coming up, and I certainly thought there was a lot of potential in the idea from the Martian Manhunter story, but I think I can imagine though this might be the peak of these, because fundamentally these short stories always leave me just feeling annoyed that I wasted time reading them. So I think this is my last of the specials. I'll come back and read the Omega issue. I'll read the end of the story from Mark Waid, but I don't think I need to read more of these. It feels like these
are just seeds for Dawn of the DC thing going forward.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
and some of them might end up being relevant to books that I like later on, but I don't know. I think they're kind of a shorty read, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna go back and read the Shazam one. I ran out of time. Again, busy week. So it definitely sounds like something I would have enjoyed. I just feel like the rushing to Billy, after we had just talked about at the end of the Shazam book how much we like Mary.
Yeah.
It's
like we can take time. We can take a couple of years. Give us some more Mary minis.
Yes, please. So
you've just made me fall in love with the idea of following this status quo for a while, and you're immediately just reverting back to Billy.
And right before we recorded, I started reading the Shazam story with Mary, and the idea that she keeps Hoppy on her shoulder as she goes around too is like another little character thing that I thoroughly enjoy with Mary. So
yeah. So as far as rating the whole book goes, I'll give it a 6, because it's got some better things in it, but fundamentally, when it comes to these collections of 13-page stories, I find myself more often than not just kind of disappointed by them, because I don't know. So reading 6 more of these over the next 6 weeks does not fill me with any kind of joy, so I think I'm out on those. I don't suppose you want to read it because you only read half of it, so
yeah. I mean, I just reading the 2 that I read were kind of strong, but I feel like I can't read it based off of those 2.
Yeah, that's fair.
The Manipul art was fantastic. I thought the Dunbar art looked great too. So, from what I saw, the Shazam art, that looks great too. So already stronger than the last one.
It's definitely got a much better, stronger list of creators than the last one did. There's no denying that. But across both writing and art, it's just a much higher standard across the board. So, but fundamentally, I still felt like, it feels like this weird extra thing to read that I'm not getting enough out of any one of the stories to feel like I'm happy that I read it. So, hey ho, that's Lazarus Planet. We were once gods. Justice Society of America issue 2. Geoff Johns writing with McKelvie Janin on the art. So Helena went back in time, landed next to the Justice Society in the 40s. That's where we left off, issue 1.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Pete, did you remember that? Because I had to go digging and remember what had happened.
I remembered that. Yeah, I did. I did remember that part.
Okay. I did not, and if I would have kept just reading, it would have, explained itself. But so I went into my, digging through my pile of books to find Justice Society 1.
Because it was
to remember how she got there.
Yeah, it was the end of November. It was week 5 in November, so it has been a little bit long since issue 1 than the typical month gap.
Because I was like, why is Helena laying on a cot in the 40s? Reminded me. And then it all clicked and it was fine.
Yeah. So she wakes up. She thinks she hears her father's voice, but she doesn't, of course. And she goes to meet the GSA of past, and she's like, "Are you Khalid?" And I recognize Judy's father, Jay, and stuff like that.
That's the thing too about this is we know that Helena's from. They keep saying from now, right? So are we to believe that this Helena is the actual future Catwoman Batman daughter? Or is this another timeline?
Okay, I feel like we have to explain what you meant there, because you kind of glossed over that very quickly. So, in the book, it keeps saying X years from now or X years in the past, right?
Yes.
So, the X years from now, given the way it ends, because it ends what looks like present day with the DC, with Justice League Dark. It's Detective Chimp and Khalid, Dr. Fate. It's the current version of these characters.
Yeah, the last ones that we've seen.
Yeah, and it says now at the end, right? So which would imply that, at least from her perspective, that she is the future daughter of Batman and Catwoman, which is interesting, especially since we're dealing with Time Masters and we're dealing with the globes and all that, because they're less about multiple Earths and more about different timelines. So I would suspect that she is the future, but that timeline is going to be erased and she's going to be this leftover like character from it, would be my guess.
Right, because then she talks about she knew Judy Garrick, right?
Yeah, which ties into the
which ties into the Lost Children,
stuff,
which we still don't know how that's going to end or whatever. And I'm like, okay, so is she the daughter of the Earth 2 Batman and Catwoman, and that's the timeline that we're getting, or is this the current timeline? There's a lot of stuff, and this isn't a slight on the book because it's all part of the mystery. I'm just trying to figure out how all these pieces go together.
Well, to me as well, the idea that this Helena recognizes Judy Garrick also kind of hints at where Stargirl's going, because that would imply that those characters on the island are going to reintegrate into the main world, and that's why this Helena will know who that is, because she's relatively contemporary for her when she was growing up.
Right, because then you add in the snow globe too, that we know from Flashpoint Beyond, which was also, plotted by Johns, because that's how this book opens up, right, with the snow globe. And
the JSA are talking about it in the 40s.
And so I'm just like, man, there's a lot of things going on here, and I like all of it. There's a lot of questions and a lot of timey-wimey shenanigans that I just love. But it just, these are just the questions I had reading the book, which makes for a longer read because I have to stop and think about it.
Yeah, so she talks to Dr. Fate and says, oh wait, you're the first Dr. Fate, and he's like, yeah, well,
Nelson.
Yeah, first by that name, although the helmet's been going around for a lot longer than that.
Which I was like, oh man, Dr. Fate, like a lot like Hawkman. I'd love to see the different versions of Fate before Kent Nelson. Like what were they up to through time? That'd be cool.
Yeah, but when she touches Dr. Fate kind of like transports to and I think he's got a different outfit as well, slightly.
So he jumps like a year and a half to the future into Slaughter Swamp, where he's talking to Salem the Witch Girl, who sounds like that's his sidekick. Yeah,
that's his sidekick in a year and a half's time. And they're looking in the swamp and they run into Grundy. They're looking for Mr. Miracle, but they find Grundy. Well, they find Mr. Miracle as well. He's fighting him, but
looking for Justice Society Dark.
Yes. So they have a bit of a fight. Mr. Miracle gets thrown about a bit in the rain, and then it comes back to where we were, and like Fate wakes up and he's like, "That's weird. It was like I was." He thinks it's a vision or whatever, but he's like, I was in the swamp, I was seeing different things, and seemingly Huntress has like, done something to him. Like and then we start jumping around in time, and we see 10 years from now, and it shows you like 10-year-old Huntress, which would imply that this Huntress is about to be born in present day DC. That would be the implication of that, because we see Selena at school, like with the principal like getting complaints about whatever Huntress is, whatever Helena Wayne's been up to in school. She's been skipping class and stuff. But there's also a tease here. It sets up this thing that this villain that killed the JSA in the future,
the Stranger
is someone that Helena's been seeing, kind of almost like it's been this mythical person that's been attached to her since she was young. Like she's either possessed, well, not possessed, that's maybe not quite the right term, but
no. Like she's worth keeping an eye on, right? She's marked in some way.
Maybe no. I think it more as like a spirit that's tied to her. Or maybe he's a better way of putting that.
Because we get to reveal who the Stranger is, and so I'm more key to, for whatever reason, this person has been popping in and checking on Helena.
We'll get to who it actually is, but I just mean in this felt more like she's been haunted by someone.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So that's
I thought you were saying like of the identity of the thing of the Stranger was like a entity or whatever.
I'm talking about like she's kind of haunted by him, and she's seen him throughout her life, and so she sees him as like a 10-year-old, and then it says. And then we jump to 26 years from now, which is where we left off. That was the main timeline in the first issue. this is right after Helena's went away. Catwoman did that. She sent her back in time, and Catwoman is now left behind with this guy that's killed the JSA, who's Degaton, and we have this confrontation here. So, yeah, and it does not end well for Selina, because it then cuts to her gravestone next to Bruce. So, yeah, so. Yeah, because it also says here that he's like, oh, you finally believe your daughter. This idea that he knew that like Helena knew about him watching her like all these years, and they've just never believed her. They've always thought, oh, this is some boogeyman that you're imagining. You're not seeing someone, which is an interesting idea as well. That they never believed her. That Batman never believed her. That
and you would think though with too, because of the timey-wiminess, he doesn't actually exist, right? So of course Batman would be like, I don't know. No, you're seeing things, kid. You know what I mean? Like,
but what do you mean timey-wiminess? Explain that.
So what I mean is, because he jumps through time, like Batman hasn't encountered this guy yet, right? Like we don't even know if Batman ever encounters Perdegaton, right?
Oh, sure, but no, what I'm disputing there is you said he doesn't exist. He does exist. He's just disappearing.
Right, but what I mean is like, he doesn't exist to Batman because Batman doesn't know he exists.
Oh, sure, but that's very different because I think we have to be specific here with the terminology because
I know what you mean,
because it'll get very confusing if we start throwing around phrases like that, because he does exist. He's just jumping through time in different parts of her life, but because he doesn't exist, he disappears and he just leaves. There's no reason for anyone to believe that she's seeing someone.
So, and I don't think this is Perdegaton, right? I feel this is his legacy, right? Because we know Johns loves to write legacy into the Justice Society. So the fact that they just called him Degaton, they didn't give him a first name, or even if Per is a first name, because I'm reading it up, I don't know if that's a title or an actual name. But he feels so much younger than what I'm used to seeing with Perdegaton in a Justice Society. But
sure. Well, so here's the important details that gets brought up though in this confrontation. He mentions that the snow globe that was with Helena was actually basically hid her from him. And he says that made her a blind spot. And whatever he's doing, whatever he's trying to accomplish, this ritual that he's doing by killing all the JSA, he has to kill all of them. So that's why he wants to hunt down Helena and kill her. But this idea that either by accident or intentionally, someone was hiding Helena with that snow globe. The idea that because that's like a timey-wimey device, it was distorting, like
around her.
Her presence to any time travelers or whatever. So I think that's a very intriguing idea that maybe someone knew that she'd be targeted and gave her this intentionally.
Yep. Well, and still, it wouldn't surprise me if that's a Batman thing, because we know what he knows from dealing with the Flashpoint Beyond stuff.
Are you suggesting that he always knew?
Not always knew, but I think he knows that there's like some tachyon particle-y things here, and he knows that Helena, for whatever reason, or maybe it wasn't him, maybe it's Dr. Batman, right? From the Flashpoint Beyond universe, doing things. I haven't figured that part out yet, but I feel like the fact that Batman is so tied to that globe right now, because of what that globe represents with his dad and the Flashpoint timeline, and what that also means for legacy and all this other stuff.
It could just be an accident, though. It could be a simple thing as he still had that globe and she liked it and has kept it with her, and that's, But it could also be an intentional thing, though, which is perhaps more interesting, is that at some point maybe Batman figured out or realized that maybe she, either through his paranoia, just thought, oh, she needs this for protection against like timeline, messer up people.
Right. Well, and again, Corky just showed up in Stargirl, and we know these books are kind of tied together.
Yeah.
In a way. So, and Corky was the one that was so associated with Batman during Flashpoint Beyond.
But what I was getting to, though, is like, if there is a threat that Batman's expecting, is it just in general he thinks that in case there's some sort of timey-wimey threat, she should be protected by having this next to her? Or does he expect this specific threat? Does he know that there's a specific threat? And if it's not Batman, then did someone expect a specific threat would target her? And because we're dealing with time travel, it's entirely possible that someone made sure she had that in the past because they know for in the future that this guy's going to target her. So they made sure she always had it so that she would be safe until she's ready to face him head on, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, and did Degaton have to wait X amount of time too? Because if she was always going to be a problem, did he have to wait for her to assume the mantle of Huntress before he can make his move for his ritual or whatever? Like, because he knows where she's been, right? Because she's been haunted by his presence, you know? So it's one of those things. How come he didn't kill her as a child, right? He had opportunities.
That feels like the sort of thing that's going to be explained at some point. Yeah. That feels like the sort of thing where we might get an issue where we see why he jumps around these specific time points and what he's trying to do. Maybe he's chasing something through time that's leading through her life. Be
more, I'm on the side more right now that it has to do with this ritual he's talking about of killing the Justice Society. You know, there has to be specific moments in time that they're tied to in order for whatever. You know, because
maybe I think this is more to do with like he's chasing her through time, and like I think there's probably going to be an explanation at some point to specify why it's these times in our life that he's appearing and showing up, and we'll maybe get it from either his perspective or we'll get an explanation on it. Because we're dealing with time travel, it just like you have to always remember that the order of the events that the main character's seeing things in is not necessarily the order that the villain's seeing things in, and that can affect how it plays out later on.
Right. Well, and so like clicking on Degaton on the on the DC wiki or the Wikia, right? He's part of a group called the Time Stealers, which is rival to the Time Masters and stuff. So if this is his legacy character, right? Because it's just Degaton. We don't know if it's Bro Degaton. Is this part of the Time Stealers trying to enact their plan too, right? In a Time Masters kind of way? Because we know from the Booster Gold stuff. Well, I know from Booster Gold, right, that Rip has a very controlled way of handling things in the timeline, right? So you'd think that Degaton has the same rules in order to get what he needs. It's one of those type of things.
Given what you just said about them being the rivals of the Time Masters, I would suggest that the Time Masters, or one of the Time Masters at the very least, are the ones that made sure Helena had this snow globe to make sure she couldn't be detected, and that she's kind of their secret weapon in this war that they're fighting. If that's indeed what we're going to get to, is that there's a war between the Time Masters and the Time Stealers.
Right, I'm just saying, like, because of who they're associated with and because of John's, right? Just the whole idea that the only time we saw Corky, right, before Stargirl was talking to Batman, right? In Flashpoint Beyond. So we know there that there's a tie between those instances. So that's what made me think of the Time Masters, which then made me think of the Time Stealers, right? So it had just led to all these things. And again, I could be all completely wrong in all of this stuff. And that's why Geoff Johns is Geoff Johns and I'm not, and I'm talking about comic books.
No, I'm just saying, if this whole thing is like the Time Stealers are trying to like mess up time against the Time Masters, it would make sense to me that one of the Time Masters, possibly Corky specifically, is the one who made sure Helena was like hidden for whatever reason, because they think she's going to be the one who can like be the secret weapon or help them fight them or whatever it may be. But I don't think we have enough details yet to actually theorize about a lot of this. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm enjoying the ride, right? Like, I love John's Justice Society for the whole legacy vibe and him playing with time right now. And, us being so removed from the Justice Society for the last couple of years, and him kind of, I feel like him writing it in with Helena interacting with them and just seeing them with Janin's art, right? Like, they look just so classic when we get to that reveal of the Justice Society, and it's making the Justice Society feel special, and if it takes this super, I don't say contrived because contrived sounds negative, but super planned out type of story with time elements and stuff to restore Justice Society to that, that status that I feel they should be at. I'm all along for the ride.
Yeah, just before the end of the issue, it kind of like recaps like the timeline a little bit by showing you 1940s, specifically the stuff in the swamp. It shows you early Catwoman 13 years ago, and then it says 8 years ago, and that looks like Johnsy's original GSA run from the 2000s. Yep. And then it says 1 year ago, and that shows you Khalid becoming Dr. Fate. So it kind of does kind of try to establish some of the timeline, and it's got this kind of cool little element where Helena's being like punched through them all, like she's sort of going across the page in the middle.
Yeah.
And then the last page is her waking up in what seems to be present day DCU with Deadman, Khalid, Dr. Fate, and Detective Chimp. So that's our cliffhanger, and we'll see where it picks up next time. So yeah, I guess we'll rate it.
Yeah. I going first, or you going first?
You always go first.
I didn't know if you're gonna shake it up or not. I'm gonna give this an 8.5.
I don't know. I guess I'll agree with the 8.5, but I was conflicted because art's very good. MIkel Janin, obviously.
With a little bit of who's the other artist here? They were on the last one too. So that's when when Helena's a kid.
It changes, yeah.
Scott Collins. The Scott Collins art is also fairly good.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, art's very good. Yeah. So all right, we'll move on now, I suppose. Blue Beetle Graduation Day issue 3, just Trujillo and Adrian Gutierrez on the art. I actually didn't read this. A cut had to be made, and this was the one that I didn't read. Sure. So you can fill them in on it, Matt.
So I think it's funny because Pete doesn't recognize Starfire like 9 times out of 10. So of course he doesn't read the book where she co-stars.
Once out of an infinite amount. 9 times out of 10, my ass.
It's just a fun narrative to go with. So this starts with with Batman and Ted talking about this Reach invasion, and Ted's trying to piece everything together, and they're in what I'm going to call the Beetle cave, right? He's at the ship, and he even has glass cases with Booster's costume and his costume, which I think is weird, but they're talking about this doesn't make any sense because they can't figure out what's going on with Jaime's Beetle because the type of encryption doesn't exist on Earth because it's Reach technology. And Batman wants to know about Dynasties and why she hasn't been on the radar. Like where could these other Beetles come from? And Ted's like, just give me time, I'll figure it out. I'm the guy that knows all about the Reach, And Batman kind of blames Jaime for all of this, because he was given strict orders to lay low, but Ted, you're kind of encouraging him to go out and be a superhero. And he's like, he's not a kid. He can make decisions for himself. And then he goes, yeah, whatever. You can do your disappearing act. And then Batman does to Ted, and Ted gets kind of irritated because he didn't think he was going to do it. But Starfire comes to talk to Jaime about how, she's worried about him because she knows what it's like to be, her whole backstory of being and essentially is enslaved to another civilization, and, not having control over her destiny. So, she just wants to come in and check on him, and he tells her that he's scared and because he doesn't know what's going on. He thought he had all the Reach figured out, and him and his Scarab were on this they had this understanding, and now that's all gone. But Jaime's mostly upset that Superman came to Grant because if Superman's telling him to do stuff, he feels guilty not listening. And Starfire's like, well, this is why I came to talk to you. You need a mentor, and I'll be that mentor for you. I'm not going to let anything happen to you. As they're having this discussion, Ted's sister Victoria has Dynasty's under lock and key still, and it's just like, we're gonna give you, I'm gonna get answers from you, and we find out Dynasty's origin a little bit here, and that she's a teacher from El Salvador. And when this gold beetle came and attached, much like Jaime had the blue one attach, and she feels like she was chosen by fate, and that she feels connected to something greater than herself, something that's much more cosmic. And Victoria's like, why, what exactly is all of this? And Dynasty says, well, you have no idea what these scarabs are capable of. So she looks at her, kind of like a thing that's, don't worry. She says, don't worry, I'm keeping an eye on all of this too. And you're going to stay here until I know you're no longer a threat to Blue Beetle. But my main question is, are you alone? And then we get back to Starfire and Jaime, and, Starfire recounts her origin, and we get a little piece of, how she can absorb languages through physical contact. Where when she kisses this random guy on the streets of Palmera City, which I don't understand why they just didn't call it Los Angeles, because through all the art, it's very much LA. Like, a lot of the vistas are like the Santa Monica Pier, some of the mountains in the back. It's just missing the Hollywood sign. But that's, Starfire ends up, learning Spanish through this. And then Jaime's beetle starts going off, and a green beetle comes out of nowhere, and comes to start attacking him. And this one has the same kind of armor he does, but has these like scythe, like sword kind of arms, which snap Starfire and Jaime into action. And we get an action scene of them taking out this beetle, which they end up teaming up to do. Jaime takes him up high enough in the sky and has Starfire supercharge the sand on the beach. So it creates like this molten glass, which then they trap the beetle in, which then it breaks out and says that its name is Natita, and then grows like giant, or like Ant-Man would. So now you have this big giant, kaiju-sized green beetle. So Starfire ends up pushing herself into like these tendrils that are coming out of the green beetle, and like kind of goes supernova. And when she does that, because of the physical touch of the going future or supernova on this beetle, she gets a history. And then we find out that what I'm assuming is Dynasties and this green Natita beetle is they are an offshoot of the Reach, which Starfire had heard like rumors of when she was up in space before she had come to Earth. So centuries ago, the Reach fought a deadlocked war with the Tamaranians. The Reach are conquerors, but what they do is they let things on the planets that they're conquering get super bad, so then they can come in and be like these saviors, and then they just strip everything away. But because of this war, it led Tamaranians to be in contact with some refugees of the Reach, and they were known as the Horizon, and that these are an offshoot of the Reach that kind of run counter. So if the Reach are conquerors, these refugees are the people that show up to kind of thwart. They're like counter revolutionaries to the Reach. After Starfire gets all this information, she, finishes her supernova phase and kind of blows apart this gigantic beetle. It kind of dissipates. So I'm still not 100% how that, big creature, if that's just a piece of the suit or whatever. But we see it, disintegrate into smaller pieces, and Starfire, or Jaime catches Starfire, and they're like, well, we got to find, who this is. But as they're going away from the pier area, someone comes up out of the water wearing a green jacket, and it's hinted that this is that green beetle. And I think it's a she, it's dressed like a she, disappears into the crowd that came up to watch Starfire and Blue Beetle. We get towards to the end here, and it's Ted talking to Victoria, talking about this gigantic beetle, and she tells Dynasties, "Don't worry, I won't be gone too long." She takes what looks like, I don't know if this is a key or her own blue beetle. It looks like a scarab, and plugs it into a computer, and it opens up her own kind of beetle layer, but it's all bathed in red. It looks super villainy. So I'm not sure if she's going to end up being, like an agent of the Reach or whatever, because the fact that in Starfire's recounting of their history is, the Reach send people in first to make things worse, so then they can come in and offer a solution. But yeah, and then Jaime gets a call, and it's his friends, and they're saying, "Hey, where are you? We're coming to visit you." And he's like, "Well, on such short notice, like, what are you doing? And we need your help." And when it goes back, it seems like his friends are in like this trance, and someone's sitting in the back of their car wearing a hood. And he goes, "Oh, I just hope that your friend can help me." Jaime, was it? And it says next fade away. So I don't know if this is another character. I'm not that steeped in Blue Beetle lore. But it seems like this person is forcing his friends to come to town to visit and bring them along. So, and that's where it ends. So a lot of fun stuff happening with the Reach and these different beetles. Come to find out that it's these other beetles. The reason why Jaime's beetle is acting this way is because these are threats to the Reach. So of course it's going to start acting up. And if the Reach know, they have intel that these, the Horizon are showing up on Earth, of course his beetle, which is programmed by them to, would go into defensive mode about it. But yeah, no, really, really enjoying this. Like that, this gave Starfire some big props here, like making her Jaime's mentor as someone that's, come to this planet, experienced everything. She has that cosmic tie and has that perspective for him. But is also steeped in like, the DC mythos. As she was a Teen Titan, she's been around and seen other things. And it adds a different layer than it being someone like Superman or Batman, right? It's someone that's closer to him and closer to his experience. But yeah, I'm gonna give this a 8.5.
Okay, very good. All right. The Human Target, issue 11, Tom King writing, Greg Smallwood on the art, the penultimate issue of this, and it packs a bit of an emotional punch here or there, dare I say. Yeah, so obviously he confronted, Chance that is, confronted Ice with her lies in the last issue. And this issue just kind of follows on with what happened after that, and what they do on the 11th day, which is she basically says she doesn't want to talk about it. And he mentions that, some point during the night they had sex when she woke up, and then
she woke him up and had her way, believe worthy, or had at me or whatever. And I was like, geez, Chance. I
believe the exact wording was, sometime in the night she woke me and had me.
Yeah.
Had me was the phrase. And then next day they go to the beach because they'd spent some time there before, and they, go into the water and they make out. She makes like a little ice raft with a deck chair and a palm tree on it for them to snuggle and whatnot. And all this is very contemplative. It's very kind of basking in the moment, even though they've kind of revealed this truth. And she even cracks a joke a little bit because he says at one point, "I like it when you lie," and she's like, "You've never heard me tell the truth." But I've kind of felt like for a long time with this book that there is real feelings there, and I think that's kind of finally confirmed, where they're lying in the water, and he says, "Well, you miss me," and she says, "Shut up," and both of their eyes are closed, and the panels do this thing where it gets closer to them as it goes down the page, and he says, well, I got lucky because I won't have to miss you. And he says, I'll just be gone. And then you see her eyes, like the tears coming out of her eyes as she's lying there. And it's this idea that, you know, she reveals that, yeah, okay, me and Fire conspired to kill Lex because he was behind my death. And we had
Overmaster stuff.
Yeah, he brought in Overmaster and he killed me, so I wanted him killed. But Fire said, oh, you can't just kill him with something cold because it'll obviously be you. We have to do something that won't lead back to you. And it's like, yeah, it's actually as simple as it always was. It was the first thing that Chance thought, is that Ice wanted him dead because he tried to kill her. Fire helped her out with it, so did Guy Gardner. And basically when Christopher Chance became involved, Fire said, you should keep an eye on him because you're sweet and innocent, and he'll never think that you did it. If he gets to know you, he'll never think you did it. But of course, the tragedy of this is that in this time, it feels like she has actually fallen for him, and she does have a genuine connection with him. So it's not just that she's in love with him. Obviously, I think from the get-go, there was probably a guilt because this guy who's innocent is like the one who's actually dying because of what you did. But knowing she's already responsible for his death, she's also fallen in love with him.
It's crazy too that this has only been 11 days, and all of this emotional baggage has happened between the two. And of course, for us, it's been coming on a year, right? It's probably over a year at this point because we had that slight break with that.
Yeah, there was like a
special
3 or 4 month break. Yeah, so over a year. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but in the scheme of the book, it's only been 10 days. So, like, whatever happened between them happened fast, and it was almost as if Ice hadn't had time to fully process everything. And that's what I love here, is that this issue takes its time, and us spending with Ice as she's explaining these things, and it's almost as if she's starting to process it as we're reading all of this stuff. And
it's notable she doesn't actually start telling and explaining the story until after that emotional moment where she feels bad because he's that, you know, she is going to miss him. And it kind of escalates from there where you know, they get back to, you know, he jumps in the water, they end up back at the beach, right?
At the shore,
yeah. And it becomes this confrontation where she like smashes the car with her ice and gets angry and says, I'm not sweet, I'm not nice, and she slaps him and basically insists that, you know, he take his revenge, that she be punished for what she's done. So the actual guilt of it really comes pouring out of her. And even like sort of brings up Chance's father and how his father died and how he was sort of begging for his life, and, you know, don't be like him. You don't want to be like him. So, you know, take it. And you get that gorgeous 2-page spread where she's put a gun in his hand and she's made him point it at her head. And it's just this 2-page spread of her saying, I love you. And she's basically saying, I want to give you this revenge. I want you to take this and have your ending before you die because I love you, right? So there's a lot of emotion pent up. And then the cliffhanger is just a quiet page of like the panels. You can see the water on the beach. You can see the car sitting there. You see a seagull looking out, and you see the beach. And you never hear a bang. There's never a gunshot. It's like sound effect. It's just the quietness that it ends on. And it's, you know, I don't think he does kill her, but the issue is ending with it's ending with him in this moment where he has to make this choice. Is he going to do it? And I think what's so fascinating to me about this book is that it's so simple and yet so complex at the same time, where like the actual mystery ended up being the simplest answer that was kind of presented all the way back at the start. But what's made it complex is this like guilt mixed with anger, and it's almost like she wants to like him to kill her to one give him the ending because she feels guilty, but also she doesn't have to live with what she's done because she actually does care about him, and she's going to have to live with that. So I think if nothing else,
I was gonna say it's a mirror to his sentence of I get off lucky, is I just stopped to exist. You're the one that's left the guilt, and now like that's hit her. And, you know,
I mean, if nothing else, I would say that the crowning achievement of this book is making us feel the connection between these two and feel the romance and feel how he feels about her throughout. Like that has been nailed so much throughout the art and throughout the storytelling across these 11 issues, that everything in this issue hit really hard, because it felt like wondering if it was real from her, and then finding out in this issue, no, it was real. Like, it's real despite the fact that it started from this place of like keeping an eye on him, from lying to him, but the feelings that she developed were still very much real.
Right. She's a femme fatale, but not on purpose, right? Like, she's still responsible for his death.
Yeah.
And she did a lot of the shady stuff, but it didn't come from a place of purpose, right? He just got caught in the crossfire because he's the human target, you know? And he's going to get hit no matter what. I still think he has an ace up his sleeve with the poison, you know? I don't think this ends with the death of Christopher Chance in the way that we think.
I mean, we've been speculating that since issue 1, because it's human target. We've questioned that since day 1.
It's the fact that he talked about he's great at biding his time, because he goes, you know, not every case pays that great. And so sometimes he'll take a job from like a rich person that doesn't want to do jail time. And so he'll go and spend time in jail, right? Do whatever he needs to, gets killed. And by the time he makes it out of the jail or the prison, the rich person's living off of an island, you know, forgotten by everybody else and stuff.
Yeah.
So
the book obviously brought up his relationship with his father and how his father died, and Ice brings it up here. But this issue also starts with a memory of his father in the beach, where his father's like trying to teach him how to skip rocks, and he can't do it. But his father says, you know, hey, you've got all day. Like, sun's just coming up. Obviously that sets the mood for this final day, where because they go to the beach and they end up staying out there until the sun goes down,
sunset.
So like they're kind of like saying, what do you want to do in your last full day? And this is what they do. This is their peaceful time together. But I think also this idea that he learned from his father how to bide his time and not rush, I think is something that is thematically going to be relevant, where I think the book's almost given as a red herring that, I mean, and it's still relevant, don't get me wrong, but I think it's almost a red herring that we're dealing purely with like his memory and how he feels about his father's death, when I think whatever he does in the last issue is probably going to be something that he learned from his father, from like a happier memory, something that came from before.
For sure.
You know, that was the vibe I was getting just from the way this issue started, and like then bringing up his father again later on.
Well, and the fact that she tries to use the memory of his father against him. You know, don't die like your father. But you know, he's already made the decision that he's not going to. He's fully experiencing all this stuff. He's not begging for his life in any way.
No.
And he's at terms with it. And just the fact too that the last quarter of this book, right, is with the sunset, and just the fact that this is the second to last issue. And so just thematically how well that all works.
Yeah, this is good into this was his last full day, because he's going to die sometime tomorrow. Yeah. Basically, yeah. So
right.
It's there to remind you that the clock's ticking down without a literal clock. And
the colors are just so beautiful, and we get all of the interactions where she finally loses her cool and smacks him and destroys the car and all this other stuff. Everything is in, you know, that twilight effect, right, where the sun's going down but it's not all the way down, but there's still shadows, and she's in shadow this whole time, right? After that, and
ignoring that we think he might have something up his sleeve getting the last issue, I think there's this interesting idea that he is biding his time, and he's in the peacefulness of this day, and everything is peaceful. You know, it's the beach, there's no one else there, it's just the water, it's just them. And her frustration is that she wants to be proactive and do something, so she wants to sort of like make an explosive finale, whereas he seems quite content, at least right now, he seems content to just let it play out and sort of ride off into a quiet sunset. But she can't live with that. She can't do that. She has to, like, there has to be some sort of dramatic action to take place to give it a final moment. And I think that kind of difference between them. So I am fascinated to see how he pays off this quiet cliffhanger. It's both a huge cliffhanger, but it's also a very quiet cliffhanger. It's literally a quiet cliffhanger. So I thought that was a very poignant ending, and it felt like the sort of thing that you get to the end of an episode of a TV show, and it would cut to the credits on the quiet moment, and leave you just kind of like desperate for more. Like, oh, come on. Yeah. So
But yeah, no, I still can't just get over the colors on this issue too.
It's so much of it's reflective, so much of it's like him thinking about his life, and the thing that matters most to him actually might be her now in this last week of his life. So I think that's quite fascinating as well.
Yeah, and I like all the art here, right, where there's a lot of she's recounting the story to him as they're sitting on that ice float, right? It's that we've seen it before, where the art's on like the right side of the page or the left side of the page, and all of the speech boxes are in this white void on the other side.
Yeah.
And it adds this dramatic effect to everything, which I can't even think of a way, if this was filmed, how they would play that out. But
I think if this was like a movie, the same effect you would get from basically like putting almost putting like a CRT filter on it to make it feel like it's something from a TV screen, so it feels like a story and not part of the real world that the rest of the movie's in.
Because like when she's talking about Guy, right, and he says, a few years past, I spend them with as kind, sweet ice, and then guys at my house ranting and raving. The way that she's in full color, fuller color, she's blue, right, in her color, like her superhero costume. But Guy's in the orange, where he just kind of is just part of the background. He's just part of the scenery, because he's not the focus. It's these little things here that Smallwood does so great, right? And I'm sure a lot of that also came from King in the script, but just the stylistic choices in this book.
Yeah, I mean, I think the important part is that when she's explaining this backstory stuff, is that those panels feel very distinct from all the other art in the book. They feel like they are a story from the past, whereas everything in the main part of the book, including like Chris talking about this memory of his father, gets the full like, oh, this feels very cinematic. It feels like all the big panels, the big spreads. Everything feels very serene, and like, whereas those like small boxes that those backstory beats play out when she's telling the explaining the backstory, they feel very confined and claustrophobic. They feel like they're uncomfortable because they're in these small windows in time, and they feel very tense because of it. Whereas, despite the fact that he's counting down to his final days, everything on the beach feels very peaceful,
open.
Yeah, it feels like so.
She's the one is locked up, even though she's
the one who feels tense right now, despite the fact that he's the one who's dying. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, man, this book just works on so many levels. It's ridiculous how every time, it manages to, like, not that it does something different, but it maintains and it elevates, just through storytelling. Because like this is a very quiet issue, and it comes across with these like open vistas and then you get to that's like we were talking about, it feels very claustrophobic, right? And then when it jumps back to Chance, right? I'm trying to find that page, because when it goes back, and at the end of that, it's her laying on him, and then at the bottom of the page, it jumps back to the regular style art, and just how much bigger that panel is compared to everything. It's just storytelling at its finest.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I can't wait to see how it wraps up in the final issue. But this is a very, very emotional kind of like quiet issue before the even though the emotions are quite big, and obviously it escalates at the end with the gun stuff. But the way it builds in that from such a quiet place where they kind of just like went about without talking about the fact that he'd kind of figured it out. And it just sort of was there and awkward. Like all of that just feels like it's oozing in mood, and I just kind of love it. So, what are you giving the Human Target issue 11?
9.5.
Yeah, I agree. 9.5. Fantastic. So this is the part of the show where we pick our favorite stuff of the week, favorite panel / moment, favorite cover, favorite art, and top 5 books. So Matt, what is your panel / moment of the week?
So it's going to be from Human Target.
Of course it is.
Of course it is. But it is that, I'm trying to get back to the front of the book because I was just thumbing through it all. But when they first show up to the beach, it's the memory with the dad, right? And you have the sunset going down and just the golds, and you see the kid in silhouette, and they're standing there. And just with the it just feels like a classic design, right? You have the Human Target credits at the bottom of the page in that corner, and just it feels very cinematic. But
Sure.
it goes from the thing where, the first page of the book is this white with the ocean, in these panels, and then it opens up to this widescreen, right? Double page spread. But yeah, that's mine.
Yeah, I'm just going to go with the her line on his chest and the tear coming out as he's saying that he won't be around to miss her. It's just like so much. Like I already felt like it was a real connection between them, but that was kind of like this confirmation. It hit really hard. So cover of the week. Obviously the main Human Target cover. It's probably my pick. The regular Human Target cover is probably my pick, but I will shout out the Steve Beach cover for Action, which is like a very Terminator Metallo head with Superman's reflection in the top of the dome. I really like that cover. And also the regular McKelvie cover for Batman One Bad Day is also very nice. So
yes, I'm seeing if there's a variant for the One Bad Day.
There's a bunch of them, but I don't know.
Yeah, if any of them do. Yeah, no. A lot of Power Girl, as I was looking through earlier. Power Girl covers this week.
Both Action and GSA have Power Girl variants. Yeah. But now the regular Human Target, that blue on the white, with the sort of sketchy art from Smallwood is just perfect. So yeah, that's my pick. You got another pick, or you just saying that?
No, that's my pick too. I went through and I tried to justify an Action Comics cover or Lazarus Planet. There's nothing hits like the Human Target one.
I've got a feeling I know what you're going to say, but best art of the week, Matt.
I mean, I would love to say McKelvie, right? But Smallwood. Also, shouts to Janin for Justice Society, because I really like his design. But is it a week with Human Target? Is Smallwood on art? It's the art of the week.
Yeah, Greg Smallwood for me too. That is just that simple. All right, Matt, top 5 of the week.
Sweet. All right, so number 1 is going to be Human Target. 2 is going to be One Bad Day. 3 is Blue Beetle. 4 is Action Comics. 5 is Justice Society.
All right, my number 1 is Human Target. My number 2 is Justice Society. Number 3 is Action. Number 4 is One Bad Day. 5, Detective. There we go. All right. Well, I'll tell you what's coming next week then from DC Comics, which is what I usually do next. So coming next week, we have a very quiet week because it is a week 5. So, good week for my Patreon books, which is always nice.
Yeah.
But next week we have Lazarus Planet Legends Reborn issue 1. So it's the next one of those. We have the Flash 1 Minute War special. So obviously that's tying into the current Flash arc, which is fun. We have Batman Legends of Gotham issue 1. What is this?
I don't know what that is.
That's a question. We have it's a 48-page annual size book. We got Andy Diggle, Carl Bostert writing, art by Domenico. We got Katana on the cover, so maybe some outsider stuff.
Yeah. Jason Todd, Black Lightning, Katana will have to put aside their differences to save Batman's legacy. With it, the world.
I do not remember the solicit for this at all.
Me neither. But it's Diggle, Carl Mostert, Gio Domenico on the cover. So
yeah. So we also have DC Harley Quinn Romances issue 1, which is a $10 anthology book, and then we have DC Power, a Celebration issue 1, which is a Black History sort of special. I think the DC Power one is one that we will read because it is a quiet week, so and it's more important than a Valentine's special. So I guess we'll look at that. We'll look at 1 Minute War.
Let's see who's on.
I mean, I don't want to read any more Lazarus Planet specials, but there's so little next week. I don't either,
because I was looking at that one, and a lot of the teams aren't doing it for me. A lot of the characters, although Trigon's on the cover, and I tend to like that type of stuff.
I mean,
but here's the writers. We have Greg Pak, Dennis Culver, Alex Segura, and Alex Packnadel. Clayton Henry, Christopher Mitten, Jesus Marino, that's a cover artist. And those are the artists that are listed. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
And with the way that it's been, man, I'm enjoying just the idea of only a couple books. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, DC Power's 100 pages, so you get a hefty amount of reading out of it. So yeah, so it's kind of a weird week 5, but yeah, we'll definitely look at the 1 Minute War special in DC Power, and then I'll have a couple of Patreon books next week. So that's coming up for sure. Yeah. So.
Yeah,
there you go. That'll wrap up the show, though. That has been episode 341. I will thank our Patreon producers for the month. Thank you very much to Tyler Heston, De Palacios, David Sharp, Boardnow, Christopher Moy, David Brown, and Al Treisman. You can support all the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. You get early access to the show whenever it's ready late on the Saturday. You'll get it versus when it goes out on the Sunday. But if that is of interest or you want to support the content, you can do it that way. You can also support us for free by liking, subscribing, dinging the bell for notifications on YouTube, or rating us 5 stars on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast from. And of course, sharing us out with other DC Comics loving people. You can get us on Twitter at DC Comics Podcast. But that is me. I am starving. I am going to go eat food. This show is over. Thank you very much for joining us. We always appreciate it. Keep reading DC Comics. And remember to never get lost in the Speed Force.